Night falls over the school as Chen Li, lost in thought, once again shows himself to be the same genius he's always been, a student who has never encountered a question he couldn't solve. But this time, the problem is different. He's fallen for a troublesome girl. Tai Xiaomei walks up to his desk and hands him her notebook, saying she's giving him her homework again because she'll be gaming that night. The teacher notices and yells, telling her to get off her classmate's desk and stop disrupting the lesson. Chen calmly takes the notebook and says it's fine, but asks why she always does that. Xiaomei just smiles. Chen then asks if he can play with her, and Xiaomei agrees, saying she needs a healer, and setting their in-game meeting for 8:30 at the starter village, under the nickname Flaming Sweetheart. Later, the rain begins to fall and the news reports a severe storm approaching the city. Chen walks home under his umbrella, repeating her username as he goes. As soon as he enters the house, he calls for his mother and says he's back. She's surprised he's home early, and he explains that because of the storm, the students were released before time. Chen's mother remarks that the rain is heavy and tells him to rest a bit since dinner will be ready soon. He asks if any package arrived, and she replies that she left it in the hallway. Seeing the box, Chen recognizes the golden logo and realizes his long-awaited gaming helmet has finally arrived. His mother asks if he's started playing yet, reminding him she told him to relax sometimes. Chen rushes upstairs without answering, while she watches curiously, wondering if such excitement could be because of a girl. In his room, he looks at the open box and the sleek black helmet engraved with the word Cosmos. Lying on the bed, he says it's the most popular online game of the moment, offering a fully immersive mental reality experience. Smiling, he admits he should have started earlier, thinking Xiao Mei is probably already an experienced player. He adjusts the helmet, saying that for someone like him this should be easy. A notification pops up, messages from Xiao Mei urging him to hurry up because she's waiting. Chen puts on the helmet and gets ready to dive into the world of Cosmos, thinking this might be the first time he's ever gone out with someone, smiling nervously before starting the connection. A beam of blue light envelops him, and his body begins to float before vanishing into the data stream. In seconds, he opens his eyes inside a digital space, taking in the surroundings as the game interface materializes in front of him. A system voice welcomes him to Cosmos and thanks him for his purchase. Chen, amazed, says everything feels too real. A panel appears explaining that Cosmos is a global survival game filled with treasures and mysterious artifacts, and asks him to choose a class to begin his journey. Remembering what Xiao Mei said, he taps the panel and chooses the healer class, ready to start his new adventure alongside her. On the character creation screen, Chen notices the first outfit set is free and jokes that since it's his first date, he needs to dress well. He picks an elegant suit, and in seconds, it fits perfectly to his avatar's body. The system confirms his selection and begins full synchronization. Meanwhile, outside, the news reports that the storm has reached maximum alert level and urges everyone to turn off electrical devices. A lightning bolt splits the sky and strikes Chen's house, causing a short circuit in the VR equipment. Excited, he says he's going to meet Xiao Mei for their first date. But before he realizes it, a surge of electricity bursts through the room, hitting him directly. His body convulses as the current surrounds him, and terrified, he tries to understand what's happening. The helmet sparks violently, launching Chen Li upward amid a blue surge that lights up the entire room. The flash spreads through the house and the thunder's roar fades into silence, along with him. Outside, the rain keeps pouring. Inside the room, the helmet lies on the floor, still smoking and crackling faintly. His mother hears the noise and wonders aloud why the power went out, but no one answers. She walks to her son's room, looks around, and finds it empty. Confused, she whispers, asking where he's gone, not noticing the fallen helmet beside the bed. Somewhere else, a group of dark creatures advances through the shadows, surrounding Xiao Mei, who lies on the ground, her dress torn and her face full of fear. Trembling, she screams for help as the monsters close in. Suddenly, a light cuts through the air. The creatures recoil in confusion. And among the flames rising in the forest, Chen Li appears, wearing white adventurer clothes. Xiao Mei recognizes him and calls out in relief. He assures her that everything's fine now and helps her up, apologizing for taking so long. Overwhelmed, she calls him her hero and, without thinking, steps closer until the two share a kiss beneath the glow of the surrounding fire. In the next instant, Chen awakens lying on the ground in the middle of a desert, still dressed in the same suit as before. A small lizard sits on his chest, licking his face. Confused, he sits up and realizes he's no longer in the same place. Shocked, he shouts Xiao Mei's name, but in front of him there's only sand and strange creatures. Trying to make sense of it, he wonders if the game's transfer process is always this intense. Chen Li slowly gets to his feet, his body tingling, and mutters that it feels like he's been struck by lightning, though oddly enough, the sensation is energizing. Looking around, he notices the blazing sun and the endless stretch of desert, concluding that he's finally entered the game. Bothered by the scorching heat, he's impressed by how realistic everything feels. Thinking of Xiao Mei, he tries to track the meeting point they had agreed on, but the system reports that there's no player with the name Flaming Sweetheart. Confused, he wonders if he typed it wrong and decides to head to the starter village on his own. He walks for hours under the blazing sun, sweating and breathing heavily as he stares at the floating map showing only his own location. Panting, he stops and questions whether he made some mistake during login, or worse, if the beginner village simply doesn't exist. Chen stares at the desert and, exhausted, wonders where he ended up. He tries contacting game support and watches the loading bar crawl upward, but the system soon responds that he's in an area outside service range. Shocked, he remarks that not even the game's support can connect and that something about all this is seriously wrong. The burning sun makes him sweat even more, and he estimates he's losing nearly a liter of sweat per hour. Realizing he'll dehydrate soon, he takes off his jacket and throws it to the ground, panting in frustration. Seeing no way out, he yells that he doesn't want to play anymore, worn out by the situation and the suffocating heat around him. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, he says he didn't expect the game to be this hard. He mutters that Xiao Mei is probably waiting for him, but decides to log out first and explain later. He opens the system panel and taps the logout option, confident the session will end. But the system emits an error sound and a red message appears before him. Unable to disconnect. Startled, he widens his eyes and repeats the command, but the warning appears again. Frustrated, he presses harder, asking if the game is messing with him. Desperate, he starts slamming the logout button over and over, but the screen only flashes the same red warning again and again. Unable to disconnect. He keeps trying, hitting the panel repeatedly as the error sound continues. The warning multiplies across the interface until it covers the entire screen, leaving him frozen, his face darkened and his gaze empty. Sweating and gasping, Chen stares at the frozen panel, unable to believe he's actually trapped inside the game. Terrified, he faces the blinking red screen and shouts aloud, asking what the system means by unable to disconnect. Sweat runs down his face as he tries to figure out if it's some kind of bug or temporary glitch. But the feeling of unease only grows stronger. Swallowing hard, he starts to consider the possibility that he's truly stuck inside the game. Before he can react, a new message appears before his eyes. Mission activated. Mission survive. The duration reads infinite, and both the reward and penalty are marked with question marks. A chill runs down his spine as a metallic sound echoes in his mind, confirming the mission's start. Yelling in frustration, he drops to the ground, shouting that he just wanted to play with Xiao Mei but ended up trapped with no escape. He slams his fist into the sand and curses, furious that he can't get out. After several failed attempts, he sighs and admits that no matter how hard he tries, the system won't let him log out. Defeated, he lowers his head and mutters that he can't even contact anyone, wondering if he's going to be stuck there forever. 8 hours pass. Chen trudges slowly through the desert, the sun burning his skin and his shirt drenched in sweat. He still tries to understand what happened, but slowly begins to accept that he's truly trapped there. With each step, he realizes the heat, the thirst, and the dizziness feel far too real for just a game. His body grows heavier, and he concludes that if he wants to survive, he needs to find a source of water before it's too late. Crouching, he picks up a small stone from the ground and examines its texture. He recognizes it as limestone and remembers a survival show where the host said rocks like that usually appear near springs. His eyes light up with a spark of hope. Looking around, he mutters that if there's that much limestone nearby, then water must be close. He keeps walking across the desert, leaving tracks in the sand and repeating to himself that he needs to find water soon. From afar, a creature watches him with its mouth open, drool dripping between sharp teeth. Chen leans against a rock and murmurs that he hopes his theory is right. Moments later, a droplet trickles down the stone and falls to the ground, hinting that there might indeed be water nearby. Entering the cave, he sees a crystal-clear spring. His mouth completely dry, he runs desperately toward it, diving into the water and drinking as much as he can. He gulps down mouthfuls, feeling the cool freshness spread through his body. Relieved, he thinks how good it feels to still be alive. Outside the cave, a glowing-eyed beast silently observes him. Satisfied, Chen lies down, realizing he's solved the problem of thirst, but still has no idea how to escape this place. Inside the cave, he stares at the holographic panel before him and mutters that, since this is supposed to be a game, there should be some kind of quest explaining how to leave the desert. He opens the map but sees he can only view areas he's already explored. He grumbles that, of course, it wouldn't be that easy, and decides to check his status first. The panel shows his basic attributes: strength, agility, wisdom, and vitality, all at 1 point each, along with a single skill, healing. Frustrated that he has no offensive abilities, he thinks that if he encounters a monster, his only option will be to run. Curious, he wonders how to unlock new skills and what the system means by special conditions. Opening his inventory, he finds his starting gear: an iron sword, a pair of leather gloves, 2 healing potions, and 2 bandages. Surprised, he remarks that he didn't expect a healer to start with a sword. Chen equips it, slips on the gloves, and decides that for safety, he'll keep everything ready. He draws the blade, takes a deep breath, and begins practicing his swings, twisting his body and slicing through the air inside the cave. The water ripples with each movement, and he focuses, testing the weapon's weight and feeling for the first time that maybe he still has a chance to survive in this unknown world. After some time training, he notices that the sword's impact and motion feel incredibly real. A notification pops up, showing that the weapon's durability has dropped by 1%, and he concludes that everything really does function just like a game. His stomach growls loudly, and he mutters that if he stays here without food, he'll end up starving. Just as he's about to leave the cave, he hears a strange sound coming from the shadows and wonders what it was. Moving cautiously, he advances deeper, realizing how large the place actually is. Surprised he hadn't noticed before, suddenly something falls. A bone rolls to his feet. Chen steps closer, confused, and notices several more scattered across the ground. When he sees piles upon piles of bones, his expression changes completely. He wonders why so many animal remains are there and picks one up to examine it. He spots deep bite marks and remembers seeing something similar in a book. His eyes widen in fear. Realizing the danger, he spins around and bolts, shouting that he needs to get out now. A deafening roar echoes behind him, and a massive creature leaps from the shadows, its mouth full of fangs snapping right in front of his face. Chen freezes as the monster charges, its glowing eyes and razor-sharp teeth ready to tear him apart. He dives to the side, narrowly dodging the bite. A panel flashes before his eyes, identifying the enemy as Desert Wolf Level 5, a high-endurance and high-speed beast capable of running 15 kilometers per hour under extreme heat. His heart races as the system details: main attack, bite strength exceeding 200 kilograms, weakness, lower body. Chen realizes there's a 3-level gap and the monster can deal 200% more damage. Swallowing hard, he admits that this place really does have deadly creatures. As the wolf charges again, he realizes there's no way to run. Gripping the sword tightly, he tells himself that if he loses, he dies. With his eyes locked on the enemy, he takes a fighting stance. At that moment, he remembers his high school days when he was captain of the Typhoon Kendo Club and the youngest 6th Dan practitioner in Z City. His mother had always been a fan of the sport and enrolled him in classes because she idolized a famous master. At first, Chen only joined because he liked the stylish uniform, but over time, he realized Kendo was much more than he imagined. In his first matches, he discovered the fear that rises when the opponent stands before you, and silence fills the air. The fear of one's own weakness. Determined to change, he trained relentlessly, repeating the same movements day and night. Even when wounded and defeated, he never gave up. Through sheer effort, he became the youngest kendo master in the city. Yet he kept training, convinced that only the strong survive. Taking a deep breath, he stares at the wolf before him, remembering that one should never underestimate an opponent, because you never truly know how powerful they can be. Gathering his courage, he prepares to strike, spotting a small opening in the enemy's defense. Shouting that this is his chance, he lunges forward with a swift slash, but the impact sends him stumbling back, his hands shaking. The attack did nothing. The wolf charges with brutal force, slamming into him and throwing him against the cave wall. He rolls on the ground, gasping, realizing his blade didn't even scratch it. Another alert appears. Ineffective attack. Desert Wolf's defense intact. The system highlights the creature's only weakness, its abdomen. Chen grits his teeth in frustration, realizing that even knowing where to hit, the creature's speed is insane. He can barely defend himself. Every strike targets his vital points, forcing him to retreat again and again. Weak and trembling, he leans on his sword and thinks that if this keeps up, he'll die here. The panel flashes red once more. Low HP, restore immediately. Chen glares at the warning and mutters with determination that maybe he still has one last chance. If the weak spot is its belly, then he'll have to bet everything on one final attack. He sprints down the tunnel with the wolf right behind him, the ground shaking with every step. He thinks this is his only shot at survival and steadies his breathing for their decisive strike. The wolf roars and charges. Chen twists his body just as it lunges. At the moment its jaws clamp down, he drives the sword with all his strength into the beast's abdomen, shouting to see if it can withstand that hit. Blood splatters, and the blade pierces straight through the creature's weak point. Chen drops to his knees, exhausted, but a faint smile crosses his face as the wolf's body collapses in front of him. Panting, he mutters that he'd let it bite him on purpose to open a gap. Risky, but it worked. The panel lights up. You defeated Desert Wolf, +6, 000 EXP, +5 levels, +25 attribute points. A golden glow surrounds him and his wounds vanish. Chen realizes that leveling up completely healed him. Then a new message appears. Mysterious shop system activated. He stares, surprised. Sitting on the cave floor, he sighs, realizing he's still stuck inside the game world. Remembering the experience gained from defeating the Desert Wolf and the attribute points from leveling up, curiosity gets the better of him. He decides to see what this so-called mysterious shop is and taps the blue button labeled Enter. A golden beam envelops him and he feels his body pulled by an invisible force. The scenery changes completely. When he opens his eyes, dozens of gleaming weapons float around him, blades, armor, and all sorts of items, each with detailed descriptions. He gazes in awe at a red dagger shaped like sharp fangs called Blood Fang Dagger, boasting an attack power of 325, extra strength and speed, and a burn effect. Then he spots a golden spear, a Black Knight's armor with high physical and magical defense, and finally a sword engraved with the name Glory Excalibur. Chen blinks in disbelief and asks if this is seriously a store. The panel shifts, showing a list of categories: daily items, weapons, gear, household goods, appliances, and even mercenaries, each requiring a minimum level to unlock. Reading carefully, he discovers he needs level 5 for basic items, 15 for potions, 30 for equipment, 50 for tools, 70 for electrical appliances, and 100 for the mercenary system. Finding it absurd, he mutters that the game doesn't just sell weapons and armor, it even sells home appliances. Shaking his head, he wonders who in their right mind would buy a refrigerator inside a game. Even more confused, he notices the mercenary system icon and grumbles that unlocking it would require reaching level 100, something practically impossible at his current pace. Just as he starts pressing a few buttons, strange lights appear on the ground. A woman materializes before him, and Chen asks if it's some kind of video presentation. Suddenly, more glowing circles form, and new figures emerge. Beings of attack, defense, magic, and even assassins surround him from all sides. Stunned, he watches as a woman with the appearance of a servant reclines on a bed, gazing at him with a seductive look. Chen panics, shouting who could have created something like this, convinced he's going to die a virgin trapped in this world. The system then states that with his current level, he can only unlock daily essentials, asking if he wishes to proceed. Chen takes a deep breath and says he has no choice, confirming the action. The screen flashes, and the panel announces, Daily Essential Items Unlocked, Levels Deducted, 5. In front of him appear the first results, 5 sweet buns and 3 bottles of water. Chen exhales in relief and laughs lightly, saying that at least the starving nerd finally has something to eat. Sitting in the cave, he realizes that, for now, he can only trade for a few items with his current level, but he needs to eat and recover his energy if he wants to survive. He then asks the system to display his status, and the panel appears before him showing ID. Chen Zili, Level 1 Healer. Condition stable with 100 GP, 100 MP, and 0 out of 100 experience. Has 1 strength, 1 agility, 1 wisdom, 1 constitution, and 1 endurance. His skills are heal and quick heal, and he has 25 unused attribute points, with a red warning below. Once attribute points are distributed, they cannot be changed. Chen studies the display carefully, realizing that even though he's in full condition, he still doesn't truly understand how the system works. It seems he can only grow stronger by increasing his attributes. And apparently, once assigned, there's no going back. He understands that these points will determine whether he lives or dies in this world. He begins analyzing calmly. Constitution defines health. Wisdom affects magical power. Strength influences attack. Endurance relates to defense. And agility determines speed. He remembers that even after defeating the desert wolf, there was a 5-level gap, and both its strength and speed far outclassed his own. So, if he wants to face stronger monsters later, he'll need an advantage in offense and mobility. Having made up his mind, he redistributes his points. 5 to Constitution to boost vitality, 10 to Strength for offensive power, and 10 to Agility to enhance reflexes and speed. As soon as he confirms, a surge of energy flows through his body. He feels every muscle tightening, his movements becoming lighter, quicker, and more stable. Amazed, he murmurs that he can actually feel the difference and smiles, thrilled by the sensation of getting stronger. But suddenly a noise echoes from the back of the cave. Turning around, he sees that the entire pack has returned. Dozens of wolves appear, blocking the exit, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Chen stands up, gripping his sword, thinking it's time to test his new stats. He charges forward, eager to measure his strength. The first wolf leaps at him, but Chen moves like lightning. One clean slash, and the beast drops dead in seconds. His eyes widen in disbelief at the result. Now he doesn't even need to strike the weak point to deal damage. As the wolves rush him, he keeps cutting them down one after another without struggle. Each defeated enemy makes the system flash with new experience notifications. His swordsmanship sharpens along with his growing attributes, and his body reacts instinctively, as if he's practiced this art for years. Consumed by adrenaline, Chen leaps into the center of the pack, spinning his blade with precision and fury. The sound of steel echoes through the cave walls as he reduces the horde to a heap of corpses. Moments later, the system congratulates him. Level 15 reached, plus 24,000 EXP, plus 75 attribute points. Chen smiles, sweaty and satisfied, thinking leveling up is much easier than he expected. All it takes is taking down a large number of monsters at once. Later that night, he decides to risk leaving the cave. It's late, but he has food and water, so he believes he can safely explore the surroundings. He walks through the silent darkness until he feels something under his foot. Looking down, he jumps in shock. Dozens of wolves lie dead, scattered across the ground. He crouches and studies the scene, trying to figure out why. Were they fighting each other? Hunted? Before he can reach a conclusion, a loud impact echoes nearby, and he watches in horror as another wolf is killed right beside him. Chen prepares to fight, but when he looks up, he sees something, or someone, taking down two wolves barehanded. He freezes, staring at the silhouette in disbelief. In the next instant, the shadow vanishes. Chen frowns, still staring at the panel's data, thinking how strange this is. He's certain he just saw something there, and the wolves' corpses scattered across the ground are proof it wasn't his imagination. That thought makes him wonder if there are other players trapped in this world just like him. As he steps closer to inspect the bodies, he notices the blood has been completely drained from them, as if something had sucked out every drop. While analyzing the scene, a presence begins to form behind him. Focused, Chen tries to make sense of what happened, reasoning that such brutal attacks couldn't have been caused by a human. Suddenly, the system blares a red alert. Danger! Enemy attack detected! And Chen instinctively spins around, reacting on pure reflex. He slashes hard, the blade cutting into something behind him. Blood drips down the edge and what looks like a severed arm hits the ground. The system notifies weapon durability reduced by 25%. Still on guard, Chen's pulse races as he realizes that whatever he hit was definitely not human. Before him stands a monstrous figure, vaguely human in shape, with glowing eyes and a body covered in dark markings. The creature steps forward slowly, and Chen instantly understands it must have been the one that slaughtered all the wolves. The monster raises its arm, the very one he had just cut off, and, to Chen's horror, the flesh begins to regenerate before his eyes. Within seconds, the limb is whole again. The system identifies the enemy: Wandering Dominator, Hidden Level, ruler of absolute speed within the Lucknow Desert, feeds on the blood of living creatures. No being can escape its class. A chill runs through Chen's entire body. The Dominator's killing aura is suffocating, as if the very air around him has turned dense, pressing him into the ground. His muscles lock up. He can't move a single finger. It feels like standing before a supreme predator, and every instinct screams at him not to breathe. Cold sweat trickles down his face as he realizes this is the first time he's ever felt such genuine soul-deep fear. Then the Dominator moves. In a blink, its body disappears, and less than a heartbeat later, it's already in front of Chen, striking with impossible speed. He barely dodges, sliding across the ground. Gasping for breath, he raises his sword and shouts that no matter how scared he is, he can't back down. With all his strength, he lunges at the monster's neck, but as the blade connects, he realizes something's wrong. It passes straight through the creature as if it's made of smoke. Chen spins, disoriented, and the Dominator is already behind him. A powerful blow hits him squarely, hurling him several meters away. He stabs his sword into the ground to stop himself, his face covered in dust and blood. Breathing heavily, he mutters that this must be the absolute speed the system warned about. The Dominator walks toward him slowly, murmuring strange words in an unknown tongue. Before Chen can react, it disappears again, reappearing right in front of him and landing another crushing strike that sends him sprawling to the ground. He collapses to his knees, coughing blood, his entire body racked with pain. He thinks that last attack could have killed him, but the monster chose not to. Confused and trembling, Chen stares at the creature, wondering what it actually wants. The Dominator steps closer, speaks again in that incomprehensible language, and, to Chen's astonishment, kneels beside him. Slowly, it picks up the fallen sword, then hands it back to him. Stunned, Chen grips the weapon and stares at the being, gasping, unable to understand what it's doing. The Dominator raises its own hand, mimicking a sword, and points directly to a spot on its body, showing Chen where to strike. The protagonist remains confused, wondering if the creature is toying with him. The battle between the two resumes, the distant desert trembling with the sounds of their clash. Once again, Chen crashes to the ground, his sword's durability now at 80%. Furious, he curses under his breath, thinking the opponent is far too fast, and that ordinary attacks won't hurt it at all. The Dominator walks up to him, grabs Chen by the collar, and lifts him off the ground, calling him human. Chen freezes for a moment, shocked to realize the creature can actually speak. With a threatening tone, the Dominator leans closer and says that humans are nothing but worms, a pathetically weak species. Chen, gritting his teeth, slashes at its arm and tears it clean off to break free, stumbling back and shouting through heavy breaths that the real worm here is him. The monster looks down at its severed arm and suddenly bursts into maniacal laughter as the limb begins to regrow, flesh twisting back into place. Amused, it says, "This is interesting, that it's been hundreds of years since it last met a human who could make it feel this excited." Chen steadies himself, eyes sharp, and replies that he's just as thrilled. It's been a long time since he's felt so alive, so burning with determination. A surge of energy builds around him, enveloping his body completely. Memories of his family and friends flash through his mind, and he tells himself he still has an entire life ahead of him. He refuses to die here. With that resolve, he screams inwardly for his family and friends to wait for him because he will return. A beam of energy bursts from his body, shooting into the sky, the pressure shaking the land around him. His eyes, hair, and stance begin to change as the system announces, "The player's extraordinary fighting spirit has awakened the special blessing of the god Latanaya." All his attributes rise by 100 points, and Chen braces for battle. The Dominator watches in silence before muttering that this is more or less the path he should be walking, then commands him to come. Chen vanishes in a flash and reappears beside the Predator, landing a direct hit that finally deals real damage. With murderous focus in his eyes, he unleashes a relentless flurry of strikes. The system flashes red. Weapon durability, 0%. Item broken. Mid-combo, his sword shatters. Chen tosses the fragments aside and keeps attacking barehanded, landing a solid punch to the monster's face that sends it flying. Brimming with confidence, Chen shouts that he'll finish this monster off and claim all the experience he can. But as the dust settles, the Dominator is gone. Before Chen can react, the creature reappears behind him in another form and unleashes a rapid series of slashes across his body. Chen collapses to his knees again as the Dominator mocks him, saying humans truly are fools, a species no better than worms. Exhausted and nearly defeated, Chen wonders if he really still can't win, while the Dominator rises into the air, raising one hand as it gathers an immense amount of energy. A massive Reaper-like construct forms above them. With a grim tone, the monster sends it down toward Chen, bidding the human farewell. The attack crashes into the mountain, the impact deafening, engulfing Chen completely. As the power tears through him, he feels something strange, asking himself if this is how he dies. The system's cold message appears. "Player Chen HP has reached 0. You are dead." Suddenly, Chen's eyes snap open. Gasping, he sits up, disoriented and confused, pressing a hand to his chest as he tries to understand if he's still alive. He looks around, then rushes to a nearby window, wondering if he's been thrown out of the game. But outside is a landscape he doesn't recognize. Uneasy, he mutters, asking himself where he's ended up. Opening the system interface, he notices it's still active, which means he's still inside the game. Chen tries to process what he's seeing, remembering clearly how he was killed by that monster. Yet now he's lying in a room, completely unharmed. Looking down at his body, he sees no wounds at all, only confusion swirling in his mind. Then, the door opens, and a beautiful young woman enters, startled to see him awake. Realizing his shirt is halfway lifted, Chen quickly pulls it down and greets her awkwardly, flustered. Blushing, the girl runs out of the room, shouting for her grandfather, Wu Bulai, that the young man has finally woken up. Still dazed, Chen wonders if this place could be a beginner's village. Outside, the old man Wu Bulai is gathering herbs. When they return inside, the girl, still startled, asks if what Chen just said was true, that he actually died. He confirms it, explaining that his body had been completely pierced through, though he still can't understand how he ended up here. The girl explains that her grandfather found him during a hunt. At the time, he was nearly dead, but still breathing. Wu Bulai looks at Chen and states firmly that this place is not a beginner's village, and they are not NPCs or any kind of digital characters like he mentioned. Chen starts to lose his temper, convinced that none of this can be real. Everything around him looks exactly like the game world, and something is definitely wrong. Then an idea strikes him. He opens his system interface and tells the two to look. He shows them his status window, the mission list, his equipment, even the map. The girl stares blankly and turns to her grandfather, asking if the young man hit his head and went crazy. Boulay nods slowly, saying that perhaps he really did suffer a hard blow, since neither of them can see anything he's showing. Panicked, Chen realizes the system isn't responding. He can't contact support, nor can he find May's ID. After searching for a while, he finally understands he's completely cut off from the outside world. Anger takes over. He shouts, demanding to know how he can leave, yelling that he wants to go home. Bulay's voice turns grim as he says that no one can leave this place. The old man turns away and declares that anyone who enters the desert of Latanaya is doomed to remain there forever. Chen, still in disbelief, argues that even if it's a desert, there must be some way out. And if no one can escape, how did they get here in the first place? The girl, whose name is Sally, explains that years ago she and her grandfather traveled to the continent of Argama to hunt a dragon, but a storm struck, and when they woke up, they were already trapped here. Boulay confirms it, saying this is the legendary desert of Latanaya, a place said to imprison even gods, and that the only way to gain freedom is to find the palace of the god Kebli. Sally, her eyes welling with tears, adds that many have tried to find the palace, but almost none ever returned alive. After so much loss, the survivors gave up and chose to live here, accepting their fate. Better to survive in the desert than die chasing freedom. Chen falls silent as Boulay walks past him and rests a hand on his shoulder, saying that new people appear here every year, but he's never seen a single one leave alive. The old man heads toward the cabin's door and says the sooner the boy accepts reality, the better it'll be for him. Before leaving, he adds that once Chen's rested, Sally will take him to the city. Chen remains still, confused and furious, refusing to believe this is the real world. It must be like in the manhwas. He's been isekai'd into his own game. Suddenly, the system chimes. A new notification flashes before his eyes. Chen stares at the screen, shocked. The system reports a new mission. Avenge the death of the god Kebli. It asks if he wishes to accept. His body trembles as new messages flood the panel. Mission introduction. You have been reincarnated under the protection of the god Kebli. Your task is to remove the seal of the god Kebli. Mission objective. Find the palace of the god Kebli in the desert of Latanaya. Defeat the monster Nabus and free the god Kebli. Reward. The key to unseal the desert of Latanaya. Sometime later, lying in the grass, Chen stares at the system panel and thinks that even though he still doesn't understand how he got here, at least he's finally found a path forward. His goal is now clear. Find the palace of the god Kebli, defeat the monster Nabus, and maybe, just maybe, escape this place. Suddenly, someone calls his name. Sally runs toward him, out of breath, asking what he's doing there. She'd been looking everywhere. Chen stands up and apologizes, saying he just needed to be alone for a while and went for a walk. Pointing at the horizon, he asks if that's the desert of Latanaya. Sally explains that it's only part of it, emphasizing that the city is completely surrounded by that same desert, stretching endlessly in every direction. She gestures around to show how vast it is. Chen then asks how long she thinks it would take to find the palace. Worried, she asks if he seriously plans to go after it. Determined, he answers yes. He has to leave this place, no matter what it takes. Turning around, he starts walking, but Sally grabs his arm, pleading that there is no palace, that it's just a legend, and if he leaves the city, he'll die for sure. Chen keeps walking, replying that he's already died once, and he'll do whatever it takes to find the palace of the god Kebli and return home. He then calls Sally and suggests they head back to the city together for now. On the way, she asks if he really intends to search for that palace, and without hesitation, he confirms. Still anxious, Sally warns that the desert is filled with powerful monsters, ones even her grandfather doesn't dare claim he can defeat. Chen smiles and tells her not to worry. He's strong too. Suddenly, attacks fly toward them, catching them off guard. Explosions erupt, kicking up clouds of sand and smoke. Figures approach through the haze, and one of them laughs darkly, saying the prey has fallen right into their trap. Coughing and trying to see through the haze, Chen wonders what's going on. As the dust begins to settle, he's stunned to find that Sally has blocked the entire attack by herself. The man in front of them grins and remarks that she used the flame cage to stop his blades, and that it looks like they've met again. Furious, Sally glares at him. Bo Ban! Chen, still confused, asks what's happening and why they're being attacked. Sally answers coldly that more terrifying than the monsters of the desert are the bandits. Trash who prefer hunting and robbing people instead of facing the beasts outside. Ban laughs loudly, releasing a strange energy that leaves Chen speechless, unsure what kind of ability he's witnessing. Shouting, Ban says that last time Sally managed to escape, but this time she won't get away with the same trick. Sally unleashes her own power and yells at Chen to run back and get Bulai's help, saying she'll hold them off as long as she can. Meanwhile, the old man is tending to the crops when a storm begins to form, lightning flashing across the sky. He looks up and mutters that another storm is coming, and that by now his granddaughter should have been back from the city. Ban faces Sally again, asking if she really thinks he'll let Chen run for help. He reminds her that she knows her attacks can't hurt him, so it would be better if she just came with him willingly. Maybe then he'd spare her idiot friend. Sally yells that not even in his wildest dreams should he say something like that. Ban frowns and says she can't blame him for being rough then. Sally turns to Chen and urges him again to run while she figures out a way to stop them, but he refuses, leaving her stunned. She asks what he just said, and Chen answers firmly that in his dictionary, the word run doesn't exist. Even though they just met, he's not the kind of person who abandons a companion and runs away. Ban grabs Chen by the face and slams him hard against a tree, bashing his head. Sally screams in panic as Ban presses him harder, calling him trash and demanding to know who he thinks he is to talk like that, saying that in this world people don't use words to prove themselves, only strength. Chen grips Ban's wrist and through clenched teeth asks if he really thinks he's strong, needing all that power just to make a cowardly sneak attack. He shoves back and Ban quickly dodges, retreating. Shocked, Ban realizes that Chen's raw strength alone was enough to wrench his wrist out of place. On the other hand, Chen is also taken aback, realizing Ban's speed is far beyond normal. Even with his boosted agility, he could barely follow the shadow's movement. Sally asks if he's okay, and Chen nods, telling her not to worry. She turns to Ban and demands to know what he's really after. Annoyed, Ban shouts that he's told her countless times already. He wants her to be his woman. Sally glares and says that's impossible, telling him to give up. Chen mutters that Ban's just being annoying to force her into saying yes, which makes Sally blush in embarrassment. Ban feels his jealousy boil over and growls, asking what she sees in him, insisting that the only reason she keeps rejecting him is because of Chen. Sally yells at him to stop saying nonsense, repeating that Chen is just a friend, but Ban snarls back, calling it an excuse, and challenges Chen to a fight, man to man. He swears that if he loses, he'll leave Sally alone forever. At that moment, the system window flashes in front of Chen, glowing in a different color. New side quest unlocked. Madness of Shadows. Condition: defeat the Shadow Swordsman, Boban. Reward: lost map of Latanaya. Chen stares in disbelief. Did that really just activate a quest? And if the reward is a map, then maybe he's finally found a clue to escape this world. Determined, he yells that he accepts the mission. Ban smirks, drawing his blade, saying the deal's sealed. His two henchmen watch from behind, sensing the thick tension of jealousy in the air. Sally, worried, asks if Chen's really sure about this, warning that he won't be able to win. Ban is the strongest shadow swordsman in the entire city. Chen frowns and asks what exactly a shadow swordsman is, and if Ban is really that powerful. Sally explains that these warriors have a natural advantage in speed and wield immense destructive strength. Their shadow-forged swords can tear through any defense. That's why Ban is so dangerous. Even so, Chen keeps walking forward, eyes locked on his opponent. "It doesn't matter," he says. "I've already died once, and compared to death, I'd rather fight for a chance to leave this place." The two charge toward each other, sprinting across the sand. Chen throws a punch with all his strength, thinking almost bitterly how a perfectly normal life ended up turning into this. If Chen could win this fight, maybe he could finally change his fate and find the map that would lead him out of this place. However, Ban dodges the strike with ease and reappears behind him. Chen reacts with a kick, but the speed of the shadows is far too great and Ban evades again. The swordsman looks at Sally with disdain and asks if the strength of the man she's in love with is really just that. Still trying to grasp the situation, Chen notices something odd. Ban isn't attacking, only defending, which makes him suspect he's hiding something. Growing desperate, Sally says she'll go with them and begs Chen to hurry back to find her grandfather, since Boulay is the only one in the city strong enough to defeat Ban. Chen interrupts her, saying he's not leaving. She shouts, asking why, and Chen smiles, telling her not to worry, saying that this battle has to happen, and if he wins, then they can finally leave this place. Hearing this, Sally freezes, asking what he means. What does defeating Ban have to do with leaving? Chen starts reflecting that nothing that's happened since he entered the game makes sense. Trapped in a world he can't escape, killed and mysteriously revived, and now the system requires him to defeat Ban to get a map. It all feels like coincidence, yet deep down he senses that someone is pulling the strings behind these events. Ban calls out and throws his swords to the ground, asking why Chen is standing still and if he's scared, adding that it's too late for regret. Chen laughs and says no. In fact, Ban is the one who's scared, hiding like a turtle. Ban replies that fighting an unarmed fool isn't fun or fair, so he grabs one of his swords, saying that since it's a formal duel, it should be fair, and tosses the weapon to Chen, who catches it. Ban adds that he wouldn't want Sally or his subordinates thinking he's taking advantage of the situation. His men exchange glances, realizing their leader is serious this time, and even Sally's anxiety grows. Chen, gripping the sword, says he never thought Ban was the type to follow rules, but reminds him he hasn't forgotten that cowardly sneak attack at the start. Ban tries to excuse himself, saying it wasn't intentional, just desperation, but Chen snaps, telling him to stop barking and fight, declaring that if it's a fair fight he wants, then they'll fight fair and head on. He thinks that no matter what, he must win to get the map, while Ban smirks, saying he'll let Chen taste the true power of the shadow. Chen charges forward, and Ban leaps with a grin, striking from above. The protagonist manages to block, but Sally screams for him to watch out behind him. Another Ban appears, attacking from the back. Turning to defend, Chen blocks the strike, but realizes too late it was only a shadow illusion. Leaving his back open, he's hit by the real Ban and knocked to the ground, blood spraying as Sally cries out in horror. A deep gash opens across his body, and the system alerts him that 300 HP have been deducted, leaving 700. However, if his life falls below 300, the mission will automatically fail. Ban watches the kneeling Chen and tells him to admit defeat, saying victory is impossible. The system window flashes again, detecting physical damage and asking if he wishes to use the healing function. Chen stands up and growls that he's never once admitted defeat in his life. Looking at the system, he confirms, and his wounds close as his clothes mend. His healing level is only 1, so his HP doesn't recover much, but the bleeding stops. Ban's subordinates burst out laughing, mocking that a priest challenging a shadow swordsman is the funniest thing they've ever seen. Ban tells Chen to leave Sally and go, saying a healer isn't worthy to face him. He turns his back and starts to walk away, but Chen taunts him, asking if he's scared to be beaten by a priest and humiliated in front of Sally. Ban freezes, furious, demanding to know what Chen just said. Chen tells him to stop talking and start fighting for real. Enraged, Ban growls that he'll show him the true power of a shadow swordsman, and his aura explodes. Shadow clones materialize all around him. Chen stares in awe. The opponent has split into three. He realizes that shadow assassins must rely heavily on clones in battle and starts analyzing the pattern. Last time, the clone attacked from the front and the real Ban struck from behind. That must mean the clone and the real body can switch positions at any moment. He concludes that this is an extremely troublesome class to fight. Ban keeps talking, saying that Trash, who awakened as a healer, disgusts him, and since Chen wants to see true power, before dying he'll let him witness the invincible attack of the shadow assassins. Chen tells him to stop talking and use everything he's got, then charges forward. Ban, thinking Chen is just an arrogant child, orders one of his shadows to play with him for a while. Instantly, the shadow rushes forward, and when their blades clash, the pressure in the air is strong enough to make even the onlookers flinch. They keep exchanging blows, and Chen realizes that the clone is so powerful he can barely block its attacks, and there are still two more. Suddenly, another shadow appears behind him. Ban laughs, saying that last time Chen was lucky enough to block, but this time luck won't save him. Blood sprays through the air and Chen's sword falls to the ground, leaving everyone stunned. But in truth, the shadow that attacked from behind is the one cut in half. Ban freezes, trying to understand how that's possible. He saw Chen dodge correctly, yet the outcome doesn't make sense. Chen steps back, breathing hard, thinking that was way too close. He almost died again. Then the system floods him with messages. Congratulations! Due to your increased agility, you have obtained a new skill. Explosive Slash, Level 1, Hidden Ability. While facing a fatal strike, you unlocked a skill based on agility. Explosive Slash. Effect. Dodges all physical attacks for 2 seconds, cannot dodge magic attacks, and the next attack deals 150% of normal damage. Cooldown, 5 minutes. Chen realizes that without unlocking that skill in that exact moment, his head would have been cut off. He steadies himself and prepares to face the remaining clones. Ban laughs, saying that was interesting. The boy dodged twice, but only managed to destroy one clone. He declares the real fight starts now. Ban calls his sword back. The weapon instantly vanishes from Chen's grasp and reappears with its master. Ban says that pitying one's enemy is cruelty to oneself and admits he underestimated Chen. Then, shouting, he warns the protagonist to open his eyes and watch closely. The shadows begin to move, their blades merging into one. Ban activates Limit Break, Spirit Strike. The shadows spread across the ground, circling Chen. One attack comes at him. He dodges. But immediately several more strike from every direction. He uses all his agility to evade, but the barrage grows faster, more intense, until the blades start grazing him. Outside the ring, Ban laughs and mocks that Chen can dance all he wants. The system warns that his HP has dropped to 30% and urges him to heal immediately. Chen realizes he's in serious trouble. Without a weapon, all he can do is dodge. Suddenly, Ban appears right in front of him, releasing a wave of darkness straight at his chest. Smirking, Ban says the Reaper has come to save Chen's life. A barrage of attacks follows, crashing down one after another without pause. Ban steps back, saying he'll find a nice spot for Chen's grave. But out of nowhere, a beam of energy shoots forward at incredible speed. Ban turns just in time to realize he can't dodge. He braces for impact, but then someone steps in front of him. The explosion's sound echoes for kilometers, leaving everyone stunned. Ban, speechless, looks back and sees Bulai with his arm extended, having stopped Chen's strike. The old man orders them to stop immediately. Rain pours down as Chen, panting and exhausted, still stands ready to fight. Bulai insists he stop, but Chen, still angry, only steps back. Sally rushes to him, asking if he's okay. He nods, eyes still fixed on Ban. The old man walks closer, saying they all need to leave as a storm is coming. Ban, however, starts laughing, finding the situation amusing, asking if Bulai really thinks his arrival means they can just walk away that easily. Bulai replies coldly that if he hadn't intercepted Chen's attack, Ban would already be dead. Ban hesitates, unsure if he heard right, then scoffs, saying that's impossible, that Bulai's talking nonsense because how could a priest kill him? He insists that if he hadn't gone easy, he would have finished Chen off long ago. At that moment, the system window appears once more. Mission complete. Madness of Shadows. Victory condition. Defeat the Shadow Swordsman Ban. 1/1. Rewards. Map X1, 15,000 EXP, hidden key obtained. Chen is stunned, wondering if the system really counted that as his victory. Bulai completely ignores Ban, puts a hat on his granddaughter's head and says the storm is getting too close. They need to leave immediately. Ban's subordinates also try to convince him to retreat before the storm hits. Even so, unable to accept defeat, Ban yells for Chen to come back, shouting that their fight isn't over yet. Chen glances over his shoulder while Ban keeps calling out, demanding to finish what they started. For a brief moment, Chen just looks at him silently until Sally calls his name again, asking what he's staring at since the storm is almost there. He exhales and answers that he's coming. Sometime later, inside a cabin, Sally is treating Chen's wounds, telling him to stop moving. Bruised and battered, he replies that it'll be over soon and asks her to just hold on a little longer. Sally sighs, saying it's impossible to apply medicine if he keeps squirming. Chen apologizes, saying he's caused trouble for her and her grandfather again. She asks why he's apologizing and admits she never imagined he'd be that strong. Chen thinks to himself that even after gaining experience, his level didn't increase and his wound still needed real treatment, making him realize he must understand the upgrade system better. He changes the subject and asks if she knows Ban. Finishing the bandage, she nods and says yes. They grew up together like siblings. Standing up, she tells him all his wounds are taken care of. Chen sits up on the bed and thanks her for helping him again. Smiling, Sally adjusts her hair and says, actually, she should be the one thanking him for everything he's done. She excuses herself, saying she'll go help her grandfather and tells him to rest. Alone in the cabin, Chen looks out at the rain and remembers another day when it poured just like this. He thinks of his mother, wondering how worried she must be, unable to find him. Then, determined, he opens the system. He tells himself he'll find a way back soon. After defeating Ban and completing the mission, he received the map of Latanaya. Now, all he needs to do is reach the sacred temple, defeat the boss inside, and finally return home. Looking at the map, he smiles, thinking this is great. Once the rain stops, he can move on to the next stage. The system reminds him he also received a hidden key and asks if he wants to learn about its function. Chen asks what it's for and the system explains. During battle, mysterious treasure chests of various colors will randomly appear. White, green, purple, red, orange, and black. Using a key to open one will grant a random jewel or equipment piece that cannot be purchased in the market. Discovering this, Chen realizes how interesting and potentially valuable the key could be. He puts on his coat, thinking he might be able to leave soon, when suddenly Bulai appears. Chen smiles, happy to see him. The old man apologizes for not visiting sooner, explaining that the storm had grown too strong and he needed to finish protecting the seedlings. Chen says it's fine and that he shouldn't worry, asking instead if there's anything he can do to help. Bulai asks about his injuries, and Chen replies that it's nothing serious, just scratches that will heal in a few days. Bulai nods, saying that's good to hear, though he admits he truly didn't expect Chen to win that fight against Ban since he's one of the strongest swordsmen in the village. Chen agrees, saying that if Ban hadn't underestimated him, he wouldn't have had such a clear chance to win. Bulai packs his pipe and says he knows Ban's strength well, but in a fight, brute force alone isn't enough. One must also have willpower and resolve. That's why, he says, Chen's victory was no coincidence. Chen mentions he learned from Sally that she and Ban grew up together and asks how Ban ended up the way he is. Exhaling smoke, Bulai says that's a long story. He begins explaining that 10 years ago it was raining heavily, just like today. He and Sally had just arrived in Latanaya when they passed a small house. As they approached to ask for shelter, they discovered a strange, demonic monster attacking the family inside. But they were too late. The creature had already killed the man and woman. Fortunately, their son was still alive, clutching his mother's body and crying out for her, asking what was happening. When the monster turned to strike the boy, Bulai reacted instantly, landing a direct hit that forced the creature to retreat and flee. That child was Ban. After burying his parents, Bulai decided to take him in. After hearing that story, Chen grows even more confused, asking why Ban would act that way toward the very people who saved him. The old man explains that Ban believes his only reason to live is to find the monster that killed his parents. But Bulai has always tried to persuade him to give up that obsession and live in peace, since there are creatures in Latanaya so strong and terrifying that Chen can't even imagine them. He emphasizes that even if he himself used all his strength, he might not be able to defeat the monster that slaughtered that family, much less could Ban. Because of that, Ban eventually left. Chen starts wondering what kind of terrifying existence that creature must be for someone like Bulai to admit he might not be able to win against it. The old man stands up, saying they've talked long enough and that it's time for Chen to rest. Still lost in thought, Chen keeps reflecting on the story and the existence of that monster, realizing that even though he has a map, he'll have to travel through the desert to find the temple, and he has no idea how many powerful beasts lurk out there. He'd already been killed easily by one before, and with his current strength, he could die again before even reaching the temple. The last time he fought a powerful monster, he received an attribute bonus, yet he still died effortlessly. With his current power, it's no use. No matter what, he must get stronger. Determined, he calls out to Bulai, asking him to wait a moment, and shouts that he wants Bulai to train him, to teach him how to fight, saying he needs to grow stronger to find the temple and escape that place. Bulai grabs his hat and keeps walking out of the house, telling the boy to just rest well, but Chen insists, saying he's serious and has an idea of how to get out of there. Bulai keeps walking and Chen, frustrated, slams the door, asking what he's doing. Ban and Bulai separated for this very reason, and now he'd been too impulsive to bring it up. From outside, the old man replies that when morning comes and the storm ends, Chen should meet him on the hill. If he can pass the test, Bulai will agree to train him. Excited, Chen promises to give everything he's got to succeed. Walking away, Bulai thinks to himself that he doesn't fully understand why, But after meeting Chen, his hopes of escaping that place have been rekindled. During the previous battle, the boy displayed terrifying strength. Even the Thunder Shield, his strongest defensive ability, had begun to crack when blocking one of Chen's attacks. Maybe that young man really could be the one to get them all out of there. Still standing by the door, Chen receives a daily mission reminder. 10 kilometers of weighted running, 3,000 weighted push-ups, and 2,000 sit-ups. Upon completion, you will receive 4 bonus attribute points. Except, he thinks it sounds like hellish training, but the attribute points are too valuable to refuse, so he accepts. The next morning, he ties a log to his back and starts running, thinking how thorough the system is in adjusting the ideal weight. After completing the 10 kilometers, he moves on to push-ups and sit-ups. As he trains, he smiles, realizing it's been a long time since he's felt the drive to fight for a goal. And that challenge makes him happier than solving complex problems ever did. When he finishes, he collapses to the ground, exhausted, and the system announces the mission's completion and the reward granted. Lying in the shade, he wonders which attributes to enhance. Sitting under a tree, he concludes that, considering his healing and defensive skills, the best choice would be to add 2 points to intelligence and 2 to endurance. Suddenly, he hears someone calling his name. Sally runs toward him, wearing modest clothes, and Chen stands up, asking what she's doing there. She explains she brought breakfast and, not finding him at the house, asked her grandfather, who said he was probably there. Sally notices he's shirtless and asks if he's been training, saying that if so, he must be starving, then hands him a package with food. Chen explains that Bulai agreed to train him, so he came to prepare. Surprised, Sally asks if it's true her grandfather accepted to teach him to fight. Chen confirms, and she smiles brightly, excited to see what kind of abilities he'll awaken. Confused, Chen asks if he isn't already a priest and whether he can really awaken other skills. Sally explains that yes, he can. Priest is only the profession granted by God, while elemental attributes are determined by personal affinity. Just like she uses the fire attribute, Boulay wields thunder, and Ban the shadow, each one is unique. The profession defines one's path of growth, but the attribute defines combat ability. Hearing that, Chen becomes even more eager, excited to discover what his element will be once he awakens. The world was divided into 5 great regions, and at that moment the protagonist was in the human concentration area of the Latinaya continent, a land rich in resources and intense trade, a symbol of prosperity and a crossroads for people from all corners of the world. To the west lay the blazing volcanic land of Megara, birthplace of the legendary Dragon Knight. To the north stood the frozen Kessencido, known as the Land of Winter, where giants and berserk monsters roamed mountains filled with crystals. In the east stretched the mysterious Vergama forest, home to magical elves and mystical creatures. And to the south was Chubitik, the territory of the dwarves, masters of craftsmanship and forging, also called the End of the World. Sally explained that, according to rumors, that place was connected to the infinite sea that led to the realm of the gods. It was said that by crossing it, one could reach the divine dwelling and obtain limitless power. At first, she believed it was just a legend, but upon arriving there, she began to feel it might be real. Chen crouched down and agreed with her, saying they needed to find that palace to escape the desert. It wasn't just a rumor. They really could leave that place. Sally's eyes lit up with hope, and she nodded with a faint smile. At that moment, Boulay suddenly appeared, saying he hadn't expected to see them so soon. Startled, Sally stood up, and the old man, with his teasing tone, asked his granddaughter if she had already confessed her feelings to Chen, since things seemed to be moving too fast. Embarrassed, Sally walked up to him and asked him to stop. Laughing, Boulay turned to the protagonist and asked if he was ready for the test. Without hesitation, Chen replied that he was. The old man then explained that, in the beginning, the gods created many races, attributes, and professions, but there was something common among them all: the elements, the foundation that sustained that world. He said not everything there could be seen or touched, citing examples like water, fire, thunder, earth, wood, and also intangible elements such as light and shadow. To master elemental power, the user needed to feel it and awaken it. Boulay closed his eyes and focused deeply. Soon, the energy of his element began to envelop his body. He crouched down, touched the ground, and told Chen to feel that presence within himself. Suddenly, an electric current ran through the old man, making the protagonist widen his eyes. Boulay stood up again and a magic circle shone on the ground. He explained that the circle would teleport Chen to a hidden dungeon somewhere in the Latinaya desert, one he had discovered during his hunts. Then he drew an ancient sword from his waist. "Her name is Ozil," he said. "She's been with me for many years." And he handed it to the young man. He explained that in 3 days he would open the portal again, and if Chen managed to use that sword to defeat the Beast King and bring back its head, he would have passed the test. Before letting him go, Boulay warned him never to forget. Only by awakening his elemental power could he unlock the sword's full potential and defeat the enemy. With a serious tone, the old man warned that once teleported, there would be no return. If he wished to give up, that was the moment. Chen, however, smiled confidently, gripped the sword tightly, and said he wouldn't back down. He stepped into the magic circle and declared he would return with the Beast King's head. As soon as he entered, the system notified, "Dungeon mission activated." The objective was to kill the Beast King and bring back its head within 72 hours. Chen confirmed the mission, and the system announced it was in progress. Then, a bright light surrounded him and he vanished like lightning. Boulay watched silently and commented that the monsters in that dungeon had extremely high defense, and only those who had awakened elemental power could defeat the Beast King. He concluded that the fastest way to awaken that power was by surpassing one's own limits in moments of desperation. Amid the dark desert, Chen finally reached his destination and began walking among dunes covered in thick black sand. The sky above was heavy with no sign of light, and the air carried a rotten, repulsive stench. He frowned, but chose to ignore the discomfort. After all, his mission was clear: eliminate the monsters and defeat their king. Opening the system panel, he analyzed the situation and realized that with his current level, facing the boss directly would be suicide. He first needed to eliminate smaller creatures, gain experience, and grow stronger before confronting the king. While reflecting on this, a strange sound echoed behind him. Chen turned at the last second, dodging something that nearly hit him. Surprised, he wondered if he had already been detected so soon, but then spotted the figure ahead, a grotesque monster with a slimy body and twisted tentacles. The system identified it: Dotem, level 20, the most mysterious monster in Latinaya. Chen raised his sword, thinking that even without awakening his elemental power, he could still fight. After all, the strength of a weapon depended on how it was used, and he wanted to test the true potential of the blade Boulay had entrusted to him. Advancing without hesitation, he attacked. Each movement was firm, driven by the certainty that the experience he gained would make him stronger. Dotem countered with a ferocious strike, hurling its tentacles like spears. Chen dodged with precision, guided by a battle instinct that grew with each clash. He sliced through the tentacles with a clean strike and muttered to himself that all he needed to do was keep defeating monsters, gain experience, level up, and grow stronger. The monster attacked again, this time releasing a storm of tentacles. Chen retreated, gathered momentum, and charged forward with incredible speed. Within seconds, he shredded every one of the creature's limbs. He felt his blood rush and a smile formed on his face. The feeling of growing stronger with every battle was addictive. He drove his sword into Dotem with full force, twisting the blade until it cleaved the monster's body in two. The system immediately notified, experience gained, 35,000 points. Level increased to 17. Attribute points gained, 5. Chen looked at the notification and smiled. It kept him focused, motivated to continue. But before he could rest, a horde of monsters appeared in the distance, charging toward him. He took a deep breath and prepared himself. The battle had only just begun. Meanwhile, somewhere else, under the night sky, Ban was training relentlessly, striking the same rock again and again until it crumbled to dust. Exhausted, he fell to his knees, panting and frustrated. "It's impossible. How could I lose?" he muttered, remembering the moment when Chen, a mere healer without elemental power, unleashed a devastating attack that made him tremble with fear. The image of Boulay blocking that blow also replayed in his mind. Even though he had never seen the old man use such a skill, Ban knew he had barely managed to stop Chen's strike, and that enraged him even more. Back in the desert, Chen continued his massacre. Each defeated monster raised his level, and the energy flowing through the system restored his wounds and vitality, turning him into a true war machine. When the last enemy fell, the system announced, "Level 25 reached. Attribute points available, 45. Medical shop unlocked. Do you wish to use 15 levels to activate the medical device?" Chen hesitated. He had no idea what this so-called medical device could do, and in the dark silence of the desert, he had to decide carefully whether it was worth the risk. He sighed, feeling a faint headache as he thought about how hard he had worked to reach that level, only to find he would need to sacrifice 15 levels to unlock the medical shop. The idea seemed absurd. He kept analyzing the system closely. If that really was the standard, then the higher he climbed, the harder it would be to reach the next level, and the cost of unlocking or purchasing items would also increase. Silently, he calculated. If he wanted to unlock all shops up to the maximum level mercenary shop, he would need around 300 levels. Still uncertain, he considered saving his levels to invest in higher tier shops later. That seemed like the smartest choice. However, the current situation gave him no choice. He needed to survive the Beast King, and some medical items might be the difference between life and death. He opened the medical shop and was surprised by the options displayed. There were potions for recovery, enhancement, function, recharge, and speed. The first caught his eye. Recovery potion, Berserker Warrior's Release, costing 8 levels, instantly restored 50% of health and regenerated 300 points per second for 10 seconds. with a cooldown of 300 seconds. Another even more impressive one was the enhancement potion Burning Tears of Crumb, costing 10 levels, granting 300% critical damage, and applying a burn effect lasting 20 seconds, with a cooldown of 20 minutes. Chen's eyes widened. He realized the shop's potions scaled with his level. The more health he had, the more they would heal. If someday his health bar reached 10,000 points, he could recover 8,000 in just a few seconds. So, I could basically become invincible with this, he thought, half shocked and half thrilled. Decided he confirmed the unlock. The system congratulated him. Medical shop unlocked. 15 levels consumed. He then purchased the recovery potion. Berserker Warrior's release obtained. 8 levels consumed. Current level, 2. Chen looked at the sword and took a deep breath. Now, with 2 healing potions, he felt as if he had 2 lives, and that made him more confident. However, his glory didn't last long. His stomach began to growl loudly. He looked at the system and realized that after fighting for so long, he had spent too much energy. Only 2 levels remained. Curious, he opened the Daily Accessories tab and found a simple basket of bread whose effect read, "Quickly reduces hunger." He bought it without hesitation. As soon as he took the first bite, he grimaced. The bread was unbelievably hard. Sally's bread was so much better, he thought with a nostalgic smile. Walking through the desert while chewing, he opened the system map and noticed that 12 hours had already passed since he entered the dungeon. Around 60 hours remained to complete the mission. According to Bulai's instructions, the territory of the beast was northwest, so he needed to head in that direction to find the Beast King. Before advancing, the system notified him again. Attention! You still have 45 unassigned attribute points. Chen blinked, remembering that he had completely forgotten about that. He opened the status panel and analyzed his stats. His strength and agility were high, but his health and defense were still low. Reflecting on his fight against the Dominator, he recalled how his attacks failed when his health dropped too much, and how he could die from a single hit before even using a potion. It's like an exam, he thought. To get a high score, you need to do well in every subject. The difference is that here I can retake it endlessly, adjusting my strategy each time. After thinking for a while, he began distributing his points. 15 in vitality, 15 in strength, and 15 in defense. Agility and magic each received 5 points. This way, he would have balance between offense and endurance. And if the battle became critical, he could use the Berserker Warrior's Lament to recover his health. Perfect, he murmured, closing the panel with determination. Now, with his body reinforced and his spirit ready, Chen was prepared to head northwest, where the true challenge awaited him. With everything set, he began walking through the desert, saying that all he had to do now was find the beast's cave and complete his mission. The next morning, back in the village, Sally looked worried and reminded her grandfather that the place was extremely dangerous, scolding him for letting Chen go alone and asking if he would really be okay. Bulai, tending to the crops, told his granddaughter not to worry, explaining that he had placed a mark on the sword and that if Chen was near death, he would be able to bring him back. Still, Sally remained uneasy and questioned why he would send the protagonist there without explaining anything, also pointing out that she had never heard of her grandfather ever visiting that cave himself. The old man stopped what he was doing and said he had only met Chen by chance while hunting. Then he stood up, saying he needed to go to the city and reminded Sally not to forget to cook the rice. The girl stayed restless, feeling something was off. By sunset, Bulai was still walking, thinking that he already knew there was no point in trying to stop Chen from following his path, as nothing he said would change his mind. That was why he had sent him to the beast's cave, so that Chen could see for himself how harsh the reality of that world truly was, and perhaps learn to give up on that impossible dream. Even so, the old man felt something different, a confusing emotion, because although he knew it was nearly impossible for Chen to survive the test, deep down he still wanted to believe that he could return with the Beast King's head. With the flame of hope burning inside him, Bulai lifted his gaze toward the horizon and murmured that if Chen truly could do that, everyone would believe he was the chosen one destined to free them, the god of that village. Meanwhile, in the desert, Chen had already been walking for about 3 hours. Looking around, he saw nothing but sand and thought the beast's cave must be farther ahead when suddenly he heard cries for help. Turning around, he saw a woman running frantically with a child in her arms, shouting for aid. Shocked, he prepared for combat, unable to understand what a woman and a baby were doing in that place or how they had managed to get there. The woman grabbed his arm, trembling, and he asked her to calm down and explain what had happened. But she could only gasp for air and repeat that she needed to be saved. Suddenly, heavy sounds echoed through the desert and the woman began trembling even more, saying that there was a monster. Moments later, 3 creatures appeared, 2 gigantic beasts and 1 smaller figure. The 2 larger ones were demonic beasts from the Latinaya desert, creatures of overwhelming strength and endurance, tank-type monsters with slow movements. The smaller one was a barbaric beast man at level 40, a low-intelligence beast tamer capable of controlling the giants and commanding them in battle. Chen was surprised to finally encounter a beast man and told the woman to step back, realizing that this opponent was far stronger than any monster he had faced before. and worse, possessed intelligence, just like the kidnappers he had fought earlier. Despite the danger, excitement stirred within him, for the presence of a beastman meant that their lair must be nearby. Before the battle began, he glanced back at the woman and her child, wondering if they too had been teleported there, just like him and the old man. The woman, panicked, held her child tightly, and Chen knelt beside her, assuring her that he would keep them safe. The beastman began to mock them, calling them foolish, cowardly insects, and Chen grew irritated, thinking this was becoming a joke. The last enemy he killed had called him the exact same thing. "Why does it always have to be insect?" he muttered before hearing the barbarian shout that they should stretch their necks and enjoy the pleasure of being chewed down to the bone. The beastman laughed loudly and commanded his monsters, saying it was time to feel the thrill of slicing those insects into pieces. However, before he could even finish his sentence, Chen charged forward and struck one of the giants with a devastating kick, sending it flying backward and slashing it repeatedly with his sword. Spotting an opening, he delivered another powerful strike, hurling the ogre far away. The woman, still clutching her child, watched in shock, astonished by the protagonist's strength. Chen realized he had indeed grown much stronger after leveling up. The beastman stared at the scene in disbelief, turned to the remaining creature and shouted, demanding to know why it was standing there like an idiot and ordering it to attack the human at once. But upon seeing its fallen companion, the ogre began to tremble in fear and then fled. Furious, the beastman roared, asking what the hell was going on, but quickly regained his composure, snarling that it didn't matter. He would show, all by himself, how to exterminate a worthless insect. In the blink of an eye, Chen's sword was already pressed against his neck. He ordered the beastman to drop his club and not move or his head would fly. With no choice, the barbarian obeyed, and Chen demanded to know why he had been trying to kill the woman and child. The enemy answered arrogantly, claiming to be a servant of God and warning that if he died there, his god would curse Chen for the rest of his life. Chen then turned the blade and struck him across the face, making him scream in pain, warning that next time it would be the edge. He then asked where the beastman's dwelling was. Trembling, the barbarian pointed toward a mountain and said it was there. Chen looked in that direction and realized he was probably telling the truth. It matched the same point marked by the system, the Black Rock Mountain, where the lair was likely located. Noticing Chen's distracted gaze, the beastman suddenly lunged toward the woman and her child, grabbing them. Laughing hysterically, he shouted that Chen had been working too hard to protect those two insects and that now he would watch as he devoured them slowly, savoring their blood. A dark energy began to radiate from his body. Enraged, Chen focused entirely on the target and charged, but before he could act, another man appeared beside him. Seeing the two of them, the barbarian realized it was over. Both struck simultaneously, sending the monster flying. Chen was stunned by the stranger's sudden appearance. The man smiled and complimented him, saying his move wasn't bad at all. Moments later, several others arrived, rushing to help the woman and child. Still confused, Chen asked who they were and how they got there. The blonde man explained that he and his group had been mysteriously transported to the desert 3 days earlier and had been under constant attack from the beastmen ever since. During the chaos, one of their companions was captured, so they had followed the tracks until they found Chen. He introduced himself as Bros, a warrior, and said it was a pleasure to meet him. Behind him, a hooded man named Philoga, an assassin, and a green-haired girl named Rachel, a healer, were introduced. Chen shook Bros's hand and introduced himself as well. The warrior then asked if he happened to know why they had all been teleported there, but Chen replied that he had no idea, though that fallen beastman might know something. Trembling with rage and pain, the enemy growled that he had suffered yet another cowardly attack and that those insects were truly despicable. Glaring upward, he screamed that one day he would kill them all, but his expression changed to fear as he realized everyone was now standing around him. He demanded to know what they were planning to do. Still lying on the ground, the beastman shouted that they were all insects, nothing but food, questioning how they dared defy God and proclaiming that his God would kill them all. Chen stepped forward and slammed his sword against the ground, calling him by name, Rakidler. The beastman froze, startled, wondering how that human could possibly know who he was. The protagonist kneels down and says he has a few questions to ask, warning that Rakidler had better be a good boy and answer honestly if he wants to stay alive. Moments later, Rakidler was shouting that he had already told the whole truth, begging the protagonist to believe him. He had said everything he knew. As a lower-class member of the tribe, he only knew so much, but he confirmed that their god had indeed captured everyone to serve as food, and that he was merely following orders to guard that place. Beyond that, he knew nothing else. Suddenly, an extremely bright lightning bolt lit up the entire sky. Inside a church in Delktown, several people were murmuring that Boule must have gone completely mad, since even after all these years he still believed those rumors. They questioned what he intended to do even if he did find the palace. Hicks, a high-ranking mage of the wind element, claimed that they could never defeat the monsters guarding the palace, and yet the old man was placing all his hopes on a child who hadn't even awakened his elemental power. He also reminded everyone that Bulai should know the consequences of angering God. The entire village could be in danger. Hicks urged the old man to heed his warning, kill the boy in the beast pit, then quietly reflect, pray, and beg for mercy and forgiveness. Bulai grew irritated, asking if this was some kind of joke, and pointed out that the so-called God Hicks spoke of tortured them at will and treated them like worms. He added that Hicks sacrificed innocents in exchange for this so-called peace, while the villagers hailed them as heroes, when in truth they were nothing but failures who live by sacrificing others. Offended, Hicks shouted, demanding to know what Bulai had just said, unleashing his power. He declared that he would execute the old man right there in God's name and charged to attack. But Bulai stood his ground, defending himself with his thunder shield. The attacks had no effect, and he ordered Hicks to leave immediately. Hicks rose, even more enraged and confused by what was happening. Bulai began to walk away, apologizing, but thinking to himself that he could no longer live at the cost of others' sacrifices for an illusion of peace. He decided to rely on his own strength to find a way to escape and protect the innocent. Determined, he vowed to do whatever it took to achieve that goal, even if it meant defying the one they called God. Hicks, humiliated, insulted him, telling him not to look down on them as if he were superior. But a person beside him ordered him to stop immediately. And though furious, Hicks didn't dare disobey. Back in the desert, Chen stared at the mountain and said that treating people like worms and throwing them into Latinaya as food for monsters was outrageous. He thought that as a player, he could simply see it all as part of a game setting, but after meeting Sally, Boulay, and the others, he realized he couldn't think that way anymore. Everyone there was alive, human, not mere NPCs, and for that reason, he couldn't abandon them. He needed to find the palace of the god Kebli and free everyone from that place. He remembered his time in the library reading about Egyptian legends, recalling that the god Kebli was one of the most powerful incarnations of the god Roshan. However, he couldn't understand why such a mighty deity would be sealed in a place like this. The words of Rocketler echoed in his mind. He had said he was guarding that area under the god's command, and that made Chen suspect that the palace of the god Kebli might be near the beast lair. He opened the system to confirm his theory, but soon realized he was mistaken. That location and the god's palace were in completely opposite directions. Even so, he couldn't understand what was so important about the area that required such protection, wondering if perhaps another god might be sealed there. Bros called out, telling him everyone was ready and asking if they could head out to the beast lair. Chen glanced at the group and silently began to walk. He thought to himself that he didn't know what kind of monsters awaited them along the way, but in theory, the place should be safer. He watched everyone ahead without saying a word. Bros explained that although Rachel was a healer, she could also create magical barriers and amplify elemental attack power, so she would stay at the rear, protecting the group. She reassured everyone not to worry, promising to keep them safe until they returned. With everything settled, Bros announced it was time to move out. Ratchetler tried to stop them, shouting to Chen that he had already warned them. If they went to the beast lair, they would all be devoured by high-ranked creatures. Chen walked past him and replied coldly that, from the sound of it, Ratchetler was afraid of being eaten along with them. Enraged, the Beastman tried to attack, demanding what the protagonist meant and insisting he was no cowardly Beastman. Bros pulled the rope and said that if Ratchetler truly wasn't a coward, then he should shut up and start walking. The Beastman grumbled but eventually followed, shouting that everyone there was completely insane and that this was nothing short of suicide. He kept insisting that they should let him stay behind, saying he could guard the exit while they went inside, promising he wouldn't run away. The group ignored him and he continued to mutter that he didn't want to go. Meanwhile, deep inside the cave, several beasts lived in eerie calm, carrying humans trapped in cages. The beastmen set the cages down and bowed before their king, saying that this was all the food they had gathered that day and awaited his command. The Beast King observed them in silence, until a deafening explosion suddenly tore through the cavern, freezing all nearby creatures. A man appeared and introduced himself as Ngom, a great mage, urging the prisoners not to fear, for he and his fellow heroes had come to set them free. Furious, Ngom shouted that killing so many innocent people out of greed was unforgivable. Channeling his elemental power, he roared that he would make the Beast King pay for it, launching his most powerful spell, Blizzard of the Ice Sword. The attack shot forward toward the king, but with a single word, all the shards of ice stopped midair. Ngom didn't understand what had happened, but he suddenly began to float. The other heroes, terrified, realized the king was doing something, though none could tell what. A wave of unbearable pain surged through Ngom's body as if a strange energy had invaded and expanded inside him. The Beast King continued to intensify his power, and Ngom's body began to swell until it burst. Blood splattered over the other heroes, who trembled in horror at the sight of the massacre. Before them stood the overwhelming power of the Beast King, Sunil, level 85. Some distance from the mountain, Chen's group fought several beasts, effortlessly defeating them all. Ratchedler watched in disbelief, astonished by the strength of those people. His gaze fixed on Chen, noticing that the boy had grown even stronger than before, and he couldn't help but wonder who he truly was and where he had come from. After the battle, Chen reflected that the closer they got to the lair, the more creatures appeared, their level and attack power increasing drastically. He opened the system, thinking that even though he had been spending level points to unlock new skills, the experience required to level up remained the same. Despite the monsters giving a decent amount of experience, his progress was slowing down and he needed to find a faster way to evolve. Bros noticed the protagonist's silence and asked if he wasn't used to the intensity of battle yet. He commented that although demonic beasts moved slowly, taking them down required tremendous power, and Chen was the first person he'd ever seen defeat one so easily without using elemental energy. That's why, Bros said, he believed fate had brought them together. The warrior grinned, saying he enjoyed Chen's company, and that if they managed to get out alive, he hoped Chen would join his guild. Chen looked confused and asked what he was talking about. Bros wrapped an arm around him cheerfully, saying there were many beautiful women with amazing bodies in his guild, and that he could introduce him to some, asking whether Chen preferred older women. Clearly uncomfortable, Chen demanded to know what that was supposed to mean. Filoga interrupted the banter, asking if Bros hadn't said his guild only consisted of himself. The warrior froze for a moment, then awkwardly laughed it off, telling Chen not to take those comments seriously. Filoga cut him off and pointed ahead, saying that the area in front of them must be the entrance to the beast lair. The three looked up to see a massive cavern before them. Chen turned to confirm with Ratchedler if that was indeed the place, only to realize the beastmen had vanished. Bros remarked that he had probably run away while they were fighting the other creatures. Inside the lair, Ratchedler was sprinting as fast as he could, thinking that he needed to warn the Beast King about the human invasion. Perhaps he'd earn a reward for it. Outside, the three continued to examine the cave entrance and concluded that it indeed had to be the lair. Bros said he could smell the stench of beastmen, proving that at least this time, Ratchedler hadn't lied. He declared that it was time to go in. The group stepped into the cave, its walls lit by torches flickering in the damp air. The warrior commented that the place felt strange. They had walked quite a while without encountering any beastmen. Chen told him to look ahead. 3 separate tunnels stretched out before them. Bros sighed and said they'd have to split up there. He took Chen's hand and drew a symbol on it, explaining that it was the mark of the Flame Gate. With the mark, any of them could teleport to the other side if they found themselves in danger or discovered something important. Bros decided to take the left tunnel, Filoga chose the right, and Chen advanced through the one in the middle. Before parting ways, the warrior reminded them to memorize the mantra he had taught. If any of them were in trouble, all they had to do was recite it. Then they separated. The protagonist began running down the tunnel, thinking that his only option now was to level up as quickly as possible. Still, he worried that he might not encounter any beastmen at all. He kept running, observing his surroundings until he came across several demonic beasts devouring a woman's corpse. They were corpse-eating ghouls, level 47, souls abandoned by both God and hell. They possessed an incredible bite force, feared sunlight, lived in groups, and never appeared alone. As soon as they noticed him, Chen grinned. He had finally found what he was looking for. Then, countless more emerged, surrounding the entire area. Meanwhile, in the Beast King's chamber, Ratchedler knelt before his lord and reported that 3 worms had invaded the cave. They had split up and entered different traps, so they were likely already dead at the hands of the corpse-eating ghouls. In another section of the cave, the ghouls attacked Chen with everything they had, but he cut them down with ease. He thought to himself that this pack of trash didn't have much offensive power, though their numbers were high, and the experience they provided wasn't much either. With that in mind, he decided to finish them as quickly as possible. The system announced that he had slain 10 ghouls, earning 20,000 experience points. Realizing that killing them one by one wasn't efficient, he sped up his attacks. Soon, another notification appeared. 30 ghouls defeated, 60,000 experience points. Not long after, another update came. 100 ghouls eliminated, 200,000 experience points. He kept fighting until every monster in the area was dead. The system flashed again. Congratulations! You have slain 999 corpse-eating ghouls. Hidden level 14 unlocked. Current level 50. Thanks to the accumulated attribute points, 3 new abilities had been unlocked. First skill, Holy Light, consumes 100 mana points to restore 500 health points and deal 500 holy damage to enemies within a 3-meter radius. 3-minute cooldown. Holy damage ignores armor and magic shields. Second skill, Annihilation. Slash consumes 100 mana points to instantly attack enemies within a 5-meter radius, dealing up to 60% critical damage to a maximum of 20 targets at once, restoring 5% of health based on total damage dealt. 4-minute cooldown. Third skill, Blessing. consumes 70 mana points, removes all negative effects, and increases speed by 20% for 40 seconds. With each enemy killed, the user recovers 3% of health, 2-minute cooldown. He could only choose 2 of the 3, so he began analyzing carefully. Blessing and Holy Light seemed like a good balance between healing and survival, but Annihilation Slash and Blessing formed a devastating offensive combo with built-in regeneration. Chen noted that all 3 skills were designed for close combat, allowing him to use Blessing to boost his speed and close the distance, then follow up with Holy Light or Annihilation Slash. However, the range of Holy Light was too short. If he wasn't close enough, it wouldn't deal damage, making its healing effect unreliable mid-fight. He dismissed that option and chose Blessing and Annihilation Slash. The system confirmed his decision. Professional skills acquired. Blessing and Annihilation Slash. Holy Light discarded. Chen began to worry, wondering if his 2 companions were safe or facing similar problems. But when he looked at the flame mark on his hand, he saw no signal, meaning for now, they were likely unharmed. As more monsters appeared, he decided to keep moving forward, cutting through them without hesitation. Meanwhile, in the left tunnel, Bra stomped his feet and unleashed hellfire, incinerating every monster that dared approach. Suddenly, he heard something strange. It sounded like music. The monsters seemed to hear it too, and immediately turned toward the sound, bowing and trembling in fear. From within the smoke, a figure began to emerge. Chains wrapped around her feet, sharp claws on her hands, and a woman approached, singing softly. Bros demanded to know if she was the one sending all those monsters and warned that if so, he would turn everything there into ashes. The woman only smiled. Then, the ground beneath him cracked open, and from the darkness below, countless black hands reached out and seized his body. He tried to break free, but his strength was gone. It had to be the effect of the song he'd heard moments earlier. The woman laughed darkly, her hungry eyes gleaming. Her tongue, long and grotesque, slithered out as she whispered that it had been ages since she'd tasted such a delicious little worm. Then she drove her claws into Bros's abdomen. He struggled to move, but his body refused to respond. Panic rose within him as he realized he couldn't do anything. The woman laughed louder, saying she would save her every second, and Bros wondered if this was truly how he would die, devoured by such a monster. Suddenly, a flash cut through the air like lightning. Chen appeared, slicing off both of the woman's arms in a single motion. The shadowy hands holding Bros dissolved instantly. Smirking, Chen asked his companion if his timing was perfect. The woman staggered back in shock, demanding to know how he had escaped from Dakar. Chen tossed something toward her and replied, "You mean this?" A severed monster's head rolled to her feet. He remarked that Dakar had indeed been stronger than the ghouls, but even so, killing him hadn't been difficult. Enraged, the woman screamed and unleashed her sonic magic. Bros tried to warn him, but the spell hit before he could react. The system identified it. Death Spirit Sorceress. Skill, Enchanting Cry. Effect, Paralysis. The sorceress started laughing, saying that now the 2 of them could, but she never finished. In an instant, Chen activated Blessing and moved so fast that he decapitated her before she realized it. He commented coldly that her voice was so irritating he had to silence it. Bros was left stunned by the sheer speed and power he had just witnessed. Then both of them noticed the flame gate mark glowing brightly, and instantly shouted Filoga's name, sensing danger. In the right tunnel, a Hell Serpent, level 55, a monstrous being covered in infernal flames capable of spewing devastating fire, was rampaging. Filoga fought desperately, managing only to defend. The difference in strength was enormous. Even maintaining his elemental barrier was nearly impossible. Cracks spread across it rapidly before the wall behind him exploded, hurling him violently into the rocks. Gravely wounded, he looked up at the advancing serpent, wondering if this was truly his end. The creature lunged with all its might, but at the last second, Chen appeared once again, stepping in front of his comrade and unleashing a flurry of strikes that slammed the serpent into the wall, saving him at the very last moment. Turning to him, Chen asked if he was okay, his breathing heavy. Filoga could barely think of anything other than how Chen could possibly be that strong. Bros reached for the assassin, saying that both his and Chen's tunnels had been traps, which meant this one must be the true path leading to the Beast King. Filoga smiled faintly, relieved to see them both alive. The warrior helped him to his feet, asking if he was hurt, and the assassin replied that he was fine, but admitted that the monster was incredibly powerful, unlike anything he had ever faced. It seemed like one of the creatures from old legends. Filoga warned that if they encountered the Beast King now, all of them would die there. Bros began to waver with fear, but Chen interrupted him, saying the Beast King wasn't the greatest danger, and their own fear was. The 2 men fell silent as Chen continued, explaining that in battle, fear only drags you closer to death. Confident and resolute, he declared that it didn't matter whether it was the Beast King or something worse. He was getting out of Latanaya no matter how many monsters he had to face. Even if it cost his life, he would fight to the end. The serpent rose again, flames burning hotter than before. Chen shouted for them not to let fear control their emotions. The three prepared themselves and charged at the creature. Bros roared that he'd take the first strike, gathering all his strength and kicking the serpent hard, but it barely flinched. The beast turned and countered with a torrent of hellfire, forcing him to dodge just in time. Philoga seized the opening, activating his elemental power, though his hands still trembled with fear. He took a deep breath, telling himself he had to overcome it. He couldn't be a burden. He had to fight with everything he had. Concentrating, he invoked Jizzo's hand, and a massive spectral hand rose from the ground, gripping the serpent tightly. "Now, Chen!" Bros shouted. The protagonist leapt from a cliff, sword in hand, driving it into the serpent's head, but the blade barely pierced its scales. The system flashed. Hell Serpent's scale armor durability reduced by 20%. Chen pulled the sword free and kept attacking. Armor reduced by 50%, then 80%. Finally, he broke through the creature's defenses. Channeling all his strength, he dragged the blade down, splitting the serpent clean in two. The group erupted in cheers, shouting that Chen had done it. The system appeared again, announcing that he had defeated the Hell Serpent and gained 200,000 experience points, leveling up. He had slain the hidden boss and obtained a secret weapon, the Infernal Flame Gauntlet, which added 15 to strength, 15 to physical, 10 to magic power, and 35 burn damage, with durability 100 out of 100. No unique skill. Description: the Hell General Higgisley used the Infernal Flame to forge a gauntlet with the fire attribute, a high-tier offensive weapon from the depths of Hell. Chen stared at the notification, surprised to have acquired a weapon from that fight, and noticed his stats rising across several rankings. The system asked if he wanted to equip it, and without thinking, he accepted. The Infernal Flame Gauntlet integrated with his body. Bros watched from a distance, impressed. It had been only a few hours since they split up, yet Chen's combat abilities had skyrocketed. He wondered how such a thing could be possible. Meanwhile, the system asked if Chen wished to hide the new weapon's appearance. He confirmed, and the gauntlet vanished from his hands while remaining equipped. The warrior kept watching, intrigued, and asked who that man could possibly be. Suddenly, a new noise echoed through the cavern. The protagonist and the warrior exchanged a quick look and attacked at the same time, repeating the tactic from the previous fight. Bros asked Rakudler what he was doing there. The Beastman tried to play it off, saying he was lost because the Beast King must have triggered the traps. Chen thought it made sense now why they had encountered so many monsters along the way. None of it was coincidence. Rakudler rose slowly, saying the three of them were lucky to still be alive. The warrior stepped forward and kicked him, shouting that he'd better lead them to the Beast King, warning that if he tried to run again, he'd be killed without hesitation. The Beastman replied that it was fine and that this time he would guide them there. Bros added in a threatening tone that if he tried any trick, he'd be castrated on the spot. Rakudler muttered something strange, and a magic seal began to glow over the gates, causing them to open before them. Meanwhile, in the village, the storm grew increasingly violent. Bulai looked out the window, then turned with determination and opened his old wardrobe. Inside was his ancient battle armor, something he hadn't touched in years. Just then, Ban appeared at the doorway, remarking that after avoiding that place for so long, the old man had finally opened it. He recalled that in the past, Bulai never allowed him or Sally near that room. They had always wondered what was hidden there, and now they finally knew: his battle armor. Ban added that perhaps he had been wrong all along, because what was truly sealed inside wasn't the armor, but the old man's desire to leave that place. Bulai frowned, wondering when the boy had arrived. He hadn't sensed his presence at all. Ban continued, saying he'd heard the old man was assembling a team to leave Latanaya, and that maybe the monster who killed his parents could be found along the journey. He went on to say that ever since he left that house, all his years of training had led to this moment. Resolute, he declared that he wanted to join Bulai and asked if, this time, the old man wouldn't stop him. Back in the beast lair, the three followed Rakudler. Every few minutes, Bros threatened the beastman, warning that if he tried anything, he'd be killed instantly. Rakudler swore he wouldn't and pointed ahead, saying that the grand hall of the beastman's nest lay before them, where the Beast King awaited. Chen asked if he knew where the captured people were being held, and Rakudler nodded, saying he knew the place well. Chen then began walking, telling the others he would head for the beastman's hall while they focused on rescuing the prisoners. Bros frowned, asking if Chen thought they'd just get in his way, telling him not to get full of himself just because he'd saved them earlier. He wasn't that strong yet. Chen started to reply that wasn't what he meant, but stopped abruptly. The system began flashing red warnings. Unknown entity detected ahead. Current strength insufficient. Estimated chance of victory and survival, 10%. The system then asked if he accepted the mission. Chen hesitated. Only 10% survival? After all his grinding, all his leveling without even awakening elemental power, the odds shouldn't be that low. Philoga noticed his strange expression and asked what was wrong. Chen shook his head, saying it was nothing, and told them he didn't want to drag innocent people into his battles. Once inside, they should focus on freeing the captives. He'd take on the Beast King alone. Bros immediately refused, saying he would never abandon a comrade to fight alone in a place like this. Chen turned to him and warned that the monster inside wasn't as simple as they thought, that his odds of victory were barely 10%. The warrior shot back that it didn't matter. If Chen hadn't saved them before, they'd already be dead. Even if the chance was zero, he wouldn't run. Filoga agreed. Chen fell silent for a moment. He remembered how, growing up, at school or in kendo, he had always handled everything on his own. He'd never thought of himself as someone who struggled, yet somehow he had always been alone. Looking ahead now, he realized this was the first time he wasn't. Rakudler pointed forward, saying the Grand Hall was just ahead, but that he'd wait outside. The Beast King would kill him if he entered. The three looked toward the entrance, and Bros muttered to Chen that if he wanted to die, fine, but he didn't. Chen gave a faint smile, and they all agreed to go in together. Upon entering the hall, they saw the throne, empty. Chen frowned, wondering why no one was there. He turned to Rakudler, reminding him that he'd said the Beast King was always in that chamber. The Beastman looked confused, saying he didn't understand either. The hall was normally heavily guarded, yet now it was completely empty. Suddenly, the massive door behind them began to move on its own, slamming shut and sealing them inside. Filoga felt a strange pressure in the air, then began to float. Chen traced the source of the energy and saw that the Beast King had returned, now seated upon the throne. Filoga coughed up blood. Seeing his friend in pain, Chen rushed forward to attack, but his strike was blocked by an invisible barrier. The Beast King countered, the shockwave throwing Chen backward. Filoga, weak and bleeding, began to fall. Chen sprinted to catch him midair, shouting his name and asking if he was all right, but no answer came. Confused, he looked toward the throne, wondering since when that monster had been there, and realizing that it had nullified his attack effortlessly. Even trembling and wounded, Filoga stood up and tried to activate his elemental power. Bros shouted for him not to push himself in that condition, but Filoga yelled back that he was fine and told the warrior to get ready. He conjured a massive axe of pure energy and hurled it toward the Beast King. Bros activated his elemental ability and leapt onto the axe, using it as a springboard to launch himself forward at full speed. At the same time, Filoga released his magic. Their combined assault struck the enemy's barrier, cracking it just enough to open a brief gap. Seeing the opening, Chen moved behind the throne and struck with all his strength. A violent explosion shook the hall, destroying part of it. But when the dust settled, the Beast King stood unscathed. Chen couldn't understand what had happened. The boss merely smiled, slowly rising to his feet, then unleashed his true power. A massive shockwave filled the room, throwing everyone backward, except Chen, who managed to defend himself in time. Excited, Rakudler began cheering, saying the Beast King truly was incredible. Chen was stunned to realize the enemy's defensive ability covered his entire body, and that his attack power was terrifying. Filoga and Bros got up, injured, and Chen asked if they were all right. They both said yes, but Chen was frustrated. He still didn't know what abilities the boss possessed, making it impossible to plan an effective attack. Suddenly, the Beast King started laughing, a dark aura radiating around him. Calling them insects, he said they were amusing and that he would play with them a bit longer. A black mist spread through the air and the Beast King vanished before their eyes. Chen looked around, trying to locate him until he noticed something and shouted for Bros to be careful. The boss appeared right in front of the warrior and landed a brutal punch to his stomach, making him kneel in agony. Bros tried to fight back, but the Beast King grabbed his arm and snapped it effortlessly. The warrior screamed in pain and tried to kick, but the enemy dodged and headbutted his leg, breaking it. Helpless, Bros collapsed to the ground. The Beast King watched for a moment, then launched another devastating strike, causing a massive explosion. Filoga shouted his comrade's name. When the dust cleared, the boss realized his attack hadn't hit. Looking to the side, he saw Chen carrying Bros's body and laying him down carefully. Filoga ran over to help, and Chen told him to take care of the warrior. Then the protagonist turned back and walked toward the Beast King. Even with his body wrecked by pain, Bros tried to rise, apologizing for being a burden again. Chen gripped his sword tightly, his eyes firm, and declared that from here on, they could leave the rest to him, because he swore he would kill that piece of trash. The Beast King smiled again, saying this was only the beginning and that those useless worms were worth nothing. This time, Chen realized he was going to try the same trick as before and fixed his gaze firmly on the opponent. In the blink of an eye, the boss appeared beside him, shouting that it was time to die. Chen blocked the strike with the gauntlet. He stated that even if he couldn't surpass the monster's abilities, in terms of raw strength and agility, he was no longer weaker. Bros watched in disbelief, saying that Chen had actually stopped the Beast King's attack, something he himself couldn't do even after 10 more years of training, and admitted that Chen was truly different, someone strong beyond reason. The Beast King laughed, surprised, saying it was the first time a mere worm had ever blocked his strike and that this was starting to get interesting. Still, he sneered that it didn't matter. Chen was still just an insect, and this fight would serve only to amuse him. Using his skill, he lunged again, declaring it was time to end it all. Chen deflected the blow with his sword and, in a steady voice, promised that First, he would make the monster pay for everything he did to his friends, and then he'd cut off his head. He activated Blessing and vanished before the boss's eyes, reappearing beneath him and launching him upward with a crushing strike. Mid-air, Chen unleashed a relentless flurry of slashes, shouting that he'd show him what an insect was capable of. He kicked the Beast King in the head, yelling that he'd make him regret ever underestimating humans. As the enemy fell, Chen triggered his Annihilation Slash and struck him head-on, but before he could celebrate, the Beast King vanished, leaving only his crown on the ground and reappeared behind him. Chen reacted just in time, unleashing a burst of blades to counterattack. Using the impact, he leapt away and propelled himself off one of the walls, keeping a safe distance, as he vowed he would never again let that monster hurt innocent people. Everyone watching was stunned. The boss was hurled to the ground, causing a massive shockwave, but quickly rose again, now enveloped by an even denser aura. Rakudler, terrified, shouted that the Beast King had begun to release his elemental power and that they were all doomed. The boss's body began to change, completely surrounded by pure energy. His speed increased to a terrifying level. He charged forward, and while Chen tried to defend, the Beast King appeared above him. Chen saw the movement but had no time to react. The blow struck him directly. His sword flew from his hand and the explosion shook the entire floor. Blood dripped slowly from his wounds, yet even injured, Chen remained standing. The Beast King smiled once again, raised his hand and began absorbing his own weapon, his aura growing monstrously stronger. Chen tried to move his injured arm but realized he could no longer control his body. His energy and abilities were completely drained. He wondered if this was truly the end. The Beast King's body began to mutate, muscles twisting and expanding until he took on a new form. In a flash, he dashed forward, striking Chen and sending him flying upward. Before the protagonist could react, the boss leapt again and hit him mid-air. Chen's vision blurred as his body was flung across the hall, and before he could hit the ground, another blow landed squarely, smashing him headfirst into the floor. Motionless and drained, he couldn't even raise his arm. The Beast King materialized two new weapons and declared that worthless insects deserved to be crushed to death, ordering Chen to accept his fate. Unable to move, Chen could only wonder if this was truly how it would end. Then, faint voices began echoing in his mind, the same voices that had haunted him his whole life. People mocking his name, laughing, asking why his parents would name him after an insect, saying it suited him perfectly. Others had called him short, a nerd, and said they hated him. Even when anxiety consumed him, all he ever heard was that he wasn't good enough for her. And after finally getting the chance to play with the one he loved, everything fell apart. That voice, trembling and broken, repeated over and over in his head. Slowly, he began to rise. The air pressure shifted, the ground cracked, and stones around him started floating. Then he remembered his mother's face, pleading for him to come home. Suddenly, a dark aura engulfed his body, expanding violently as everyone nearby hid in terror of what was coming. When the darkness cleared, a completely different sword appeared in his hand. The Beast King watched as the energy around Chen formed into ribbons of shadow that wrapped around his body like armor. A mark appeared across his face and one of his eyes turned black. Moments earlier, Chen had heard someone calling his name, urging him to wake up. He opened his eyes and found himself floating in a void. Looking around in confusion, he asked what was happening because moments ago he'd been fighting the Beast King. Then he noticed something moving below and shouted, asking where he was. When no one answered, he looked at his own hands and wondered if he was dead. A voice answered that he wasn't. Not yet. He turned and saw a man standing there. The stranger called him by name and Chen, shocked, asked how he knew who he was and who he himself might be. The man replied that he didn't really know who he was either, only that ever since he awoke, he had been trapped there, uncertain if 1,000 or 10,000 years had passed. Chen, still confused, asked what he was talking about. The man kept walking, saying he once heard a voice tell him that someday someone would free him from that place. And it seemed Chen was that person. Still bewildered, Chen asked only that he tell him how to leave. The man then knelt, extended his hand, and begged Chen to accept him as his disciple. He explained that the voice had said only the one he recognized as his master could leave, so he pleaded for Chen to take him as his teacher. Without hesitation, Chen agreed, saying he'd accept him as a disciple, but he wanted to leave immediately. The man smiled and the two clasped hands. Instantly, the man's aura began flowing into Chen's body. Back in the present, Chen realized he had truly returned. That meant the man hadn't lied. Moreover, he felt an overwhelmingly powerful energy surging through him. He wondered if this was the result of accepting that man as his disciple. The system notified him. Element awakened. Chaos. Seeing the message, Chen thought it all made sense. That mysterious man must have been the embodiment of his elemental power. The Beast King couldn't believe it. That worm not only survived, but seemed stronger than ever. The system announced that with the activation of his elemental power, all his abilities had been enhanced and a new one unlocked. Obliterate. Effect. Sacrifice 90% of health to activate the power. drains 100 health points per minute while the chaos element remains active. All attacks become infused with chaos energy, ignoring defenses and dealing true damage. All skills are elevated to the elemental level. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 30 minutes. The Elemental Awakening had also removed the seal on his weapon. Ozil, weapon attributes: Strength plus 250, Health plus 150, Stamina plus 100, Wisdom plus 30. Chen looked at the sword in his hand and realized this must be the true form of the old man's blade. Before, it hadn't provided any bonuses at all, but once he awakened his elemental power and broke the seal, everything changed. Now it was time to strike back. The protagonist charged at the Beast King, and the furious boss recreated his shield, asking if Chen really believed that just awakening his elemental power made him capable of facing him. But Chen's strike cut through the barrier and shattered the boss's mask, triggering an explosion so powerful that the entire mountain began to collapse. Enraged, the Beast King counterattacked, refusing to accept that he could lose to a mere worm. That was impossible. Deciding to hold nothing back, he swore he would crush him like the insect he was. Chen activated his explosive Chaos Slash, unleashing countless blades of energy that tore into the Beast King, who couldn't comprehend how he was being overwhelmed. Consumed by rage for everything the monster had done to his friends, Chen unleashed his ultimate ability: Obliterate. His body began to bleed, his life dropping by 90%, but the final blow destroyed the boss Sunil completely. The system congratulated him for defeating the enemy, awarding 400,000 experience points and 2 bonus levels. The mission Beast King was completed, granting another 500,000 experience points and a black treasure chest. Meanwhile, back in the village, the old man Bu Lai scolded Ban, telling him that if he truly wanted to help, he had to do things properly. Ban replied that he wasn't being careless, just rusty, since it had been so long since he last trained. Nearby, Sally sat beneath a tree eating an apple, asking her grandfather if the protagonist was all right. It had been 3 days since he'd been sent into the desert. Bu Lai replied that he would go look for him soon, but suddenly the ground began to shake and a green light appeared on the horizon. The flash swept past them, raising a fierce wind. Startled, Ban asked what that was, while Sally ran to her grandfather, asking if he was all right and what had just happened. Bu Lai explained that it was a shockwave released when a high-level monster is killed, and that it came precisely from the direction of the Beast King's cave. He concluded that the boy must have awakened his elemental power and defeated the creature. Inside the cave, the dense aura began to fade. Rakudler stood in shock, asking if the Beast King had truly been killed. Filoga thought that if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would never have believed anyone could be that strong. Bra stared at the scene, realizing that Chen's combat ability had surpassed anything he'd ever imagined, and wondered if the boy had been hiding all that power the entire time. Chen stood still, unable to believe he had actually defeated such a powerful enemy. Yet he felt the presence of the entity that had granted him his elemental power, and it was even more terrifying than before. Confused, he slowly returned to normal form and wondered if, now that he had accepted that man as his disciple, he was somehow residing within his body. Filoga approached and asked if he was all right, puzzled by how distant he seemed even after winning. Chen said he was fine, but noticed that both of them were gravely injured and told them to rest while he went to rescue the other captives. He turned to Ratchedler and ordered him to lead the way to where the remaining humans were being held. Even as he moved forward, his thoughts swirled with uncertainty. Who was that entity? Why had he been in that place? And was it really a coincidence that Chen had ended up there? The doubt gnawed at him, and he began to wonder if someone was orchestrating all of this. But before he could think further, the side effects of awakening hit him. His balance faltered, and he began to fall. At that exact moment, Bu Lai appeared, catching him in his arms. Just before losing consciousness, Chen whispered that he had completed the mission. Suddenly, a voice called out to him, urging him to wake up and open his eyes. He realized he was no longer in the cave. His mother was beside him, smiling softly and saying it was already late, asking how long he planned to keep sleeping. Trembling, he asked if she was really there, and if he had truly returned home. She smiled again, saying she had prepared all his favorite dishes and that it was time for him to get up. Chen immediately threw his arms around her and began to cry, telling his mother how much he had missed her. But suddenly, an irritated voice asked what the hell he was doing. Ban smacked him on the head, confused, and demanded to know why the protagonist was hugging him like that. Chen froze, realizing in embarrassment that he hadn't gone home after all. Flushed red, he pulled away and sat back on the bed, asking Ban what he was doing there. Ban crossed his arms and replied that it was nothing. He had just agreed with the old man Bu Lai to help take care of Chen while he recovered. However, he warned that as soon as Chen was back on his feet, they'd be finishing that duel they left unfinished. Still embarrassed, Ban left, telling Chen to eat and regain his strength, and that he'd go inform Bu Lai and Sally that he was awake. Left alone, Chen sat in silence, confused and trying to figure out whether everything that happened had been just a dream, and how he'd ended up back there since he remembered seeing the old man right before he passed out. He wondered what had happened to Bros and Filoga, but the headache pounding in his skull made it impossible to think straight. At that moment, the system interface appeared before his eyes, notifying him that he still had an unopened treasure chest and unassigned attribute points, urging him to manage them immediately. Chen wondered if the chest was the same one he'd received for defeating the Beast King. Then he remembered the silver key he had earned after defeating Ban and thought maybe he could use it. The system confirmed. To open the chest, the silver key will be consumed. Proceed? Chen answered yes. Use successful. The mysterious chest is being opened. Calculating current experience. 135,000. Calculating obtained items. A rapid stream of notifications filled his vision. Obtained Centurion boots. Obtained Depraved Knight's chestplate. Obtained Mithril chestplate. Obtained Fine Gladiator's glove. Obtained Gauntlet of the Brutal Tribe. Obtained Arcane Weaver's glove. Obtained Explorer's ring. Obtained Golden Ring of Fortune. And finally, congratulations! You have obtained the legendary Ring of Sunil's Protection. All attributes plus 10. Upon equipping, gain the ability Beast King's Protective Shield. Chen's eyes widened in shock. But before he could celebrate, another notification appeared. A hidden legendary item has been obtained. Excited, he frowned moments later as he read what it was. What? My legendary reward is an egg? Is this thing edible? He muttered in disbelief. Suddenly, the egg began to crack before his eyes. Chen grew excited, thinking it might hatch into some kind of rare beast or powerful familiar. But to his utter astonishment, what emerged from inside was a child. The tiny being smiled brightly, looked up at him, and shouted with joy, "Daddy!" before leaping straight into his arms. Chen froze, nearly having a heart attack, completely unable to comprehend what was happening. His legendary item was calling him Dad. While the child kept screaming, Chen thought it might be better to open the system and find out what she really was, trying to understand if she had any kind of special usefulness. After all, who would receive a child as a reward for opening a chest? The system then informed him that he didn't have enough authority to identify the living being and that it would need to be updated first. After the update, the system returned and announced that the living being had been bound to him. Chen was shocked, wondering if that meant he was really being linked to the child, which would imply having to take care of her and bring her everywhere he went. While he was thinking that, the child suddenly jumped onto his head, calling him Dad again. Startled, he said he wasn't her father and told her to get off his head immediately, but the child, full of energy, kept clinging, jumping, and grabbing onto him while calling him Dad. Losing patience, Chen grabbed her by the leg and firmly said he wasn't her father, adding that he couldn't stay with a child while looking for the God Palace, and that he would ask Sally and the old man to take care of her instead. The child then made a sad expression, and Chen kept watching until she began to cry loudly. He tried to calm her down, placing her on the bed and apologizing, but the crying only grew louder, releasing an aura that became more and more intense. The system appeared with an alert, asking why the protagonist wished to abandon the bound being, informing him that a punishment had been activated with a duration of 30 minutes, and that the countdown would begin immediately. When the timer started at 10, Chen panicked, asking aloud what kind of punishment that was. The child began to emit an even stronger light, and her aura turned dense and oppressive. Chen covered his eyes and asked what was happening until, suddenly, everything went quiet. When he opened his eyes, he realized he had been teleported somewhere else, while the child kept crying. He crouched down, apologized again, and promised he wouldn't abandon her, though he admitted he was just a high school student and didn't know how to take care of a child. While trying to talk to his new child, he heard a noise and looked to the side, seeing several Icefield Raider monsters, all level 40 and of the elite class. Worried, he thought that he couldn't attack properly while holding the child, but realized he had no choice but to fight. The system appeared again, informing him that he must eliminate all monsters within 30 minutes, and that if any remained, a second wave with twice as many enemies would appear. It also warned that if the bound being died, Chen would die as well, and he wouldn't gain any experience from those monsters. Terrified, he barely had time to react before one of the creatures lunged toward the child. Chen grabbed her and quickly leapt back, realizing that he truly had no choice but to fight. He looked into the child's eyes and said that neither of them could die there, asking him to hold on tight. He drew his sword and activated his elemental power while the child, now smiling, hugged him by the neck, calling him Dad. Chen took a deep breath and said it was better to get started right away. Meanwhile, Boulay was heading home, commenting that Sally had gone to the city to buy food but hadn't returned yet, which made him worried about Chen's well-being. Ban, standing beside the old man, said that the protagonist was probably fine since he had always been full of energy, but soon changed the subject, asking if the old man had managed to gather people willing to join the search for the God Palace. Boulay replied that the situation was worse than he imagined. No one wanted to join them. Everyone was afraid because of the lies spread by Hicks and the others. believing that challenging the gods would bring their wrath and destroy the city's peace. Annoyed, Ban said that if they couldn't recruit anyone, they themselves would find the god palace and leave. The old man, however, kept walking and explained that the monsters outside the city were much stronger than they could handle and that he wouldn't risk the lives of family and friends without a real chance of survival. Boulay then suggested going to check how the protagonist was doing, since he could describe the level of danger outside more precisely. At that moment, Sally appeared running and asked what they were talking about. The old man felt relieved to see her and said it was good that she was back since Ban had told him the protagonist was awake. Sally, excited, praised Ban for taking good care of everyone and said she needed to see him immediately, eager to find out what kind of elemental power he had awakened. Holding the old man's arm, she ran off, dragging him along while Ban just watched. Meanwhile, in the frozen region, the battle was coming to an end. Almost all the monsters were already defeated. Chen kept attacking until he eliminated the last one. The system then congratulated him for completing the punishment. Exhausted, he was breathing heavily while the child kept jumping and shouting joyfully, calling him Dad. Chen closed his eyes, feeling a bad premonition and thinking that if he really was that child's father, difficult days were surely ahead. Suddenly, he was teleported back to the room. Relieved, he took a deep breath and murmured that he had finally returned. However, before he could rest, the door burst open and Sally entered, calling for him. When she saw the child, she was surprised, and the child, in turn, stared at her curiously. Sally quickly approached, picked the little one up and started playing, charmed by how cute she was, asking where she had come from. Chen replied that the little one had come out of an egg. Laughing, Sally told him to stop joking since she had never heard of a child being born from an egg. Chen, on the other hand, thought that it didn't make much logical sense either, but he couldn't send her away or leave her with anyone, which only made things more complicated. Soon after, Boulay and Bon arrived. The old man asked why there was so much noise, saying he could hear the shouting from far away. Sally lifted the child and excitedly explained that Chen had brought her from somewhere, asking if she wasn't adorable. The two were shocked, and Ban commented that he hadn't seen any child with him before, asking what had happened. Trying to play it off, Chen joked that maybe she had crawled out of bed, but deep down he knew there was no way to explain it, and even if there was, no one would understand. So he decided to just say that he had rescued the child from the beast's cave. Boulay sighed and scolded the protagonist, reminding him that he was still recovering and shouldn't be causing such a commotion. Then he asked Ban and Sally to prepare something to eat so they could talk more calmly over a meal. Ban pointed at the child's horn, curious, asking if they were real. Sally was surprised by the question but soon set the child on the ground and, smiling, told her to behave since her big sister was about to prepare a delicious meal for her. The child watched attentively, as if understanding her words, and tried to make a few sounds, seeming to want to communicate. Outside as they walked, Ban asked Sally if she had ever thought about being his girlfriend. Without hesitation, she refused, saying she wasn't interested. Inside the house, Chen noticed the child calling him insistently, saying she was hungry. He crouched down and asked if that was true, explaining that they just needed to wait a little longer since the big sister was cooking. The child then started running and playing around the room, and Boulay took the moment to approach and apologize to the protagonist. Surprised, Chen asked why. The old man explained that he had been careless not to imagine that a high-level monster was hiding inside the beast's lair, and that the boy had almost died because of it. Chen told him not to blame himself, saying that going in there had been entirely his own decision, and that, in the end, that mission had given him more clarity. Thanks to it, he had understood the old man's words, and realized that his arrival in that place hadn't been an accident. He told him that when he was about to die fighting the Beast King, he ended up entering some kind of spatial dimension, where he met a mysterious man who said he had been waiting for him for a long time. That man told Chen that he could only leave if he agreed to become his master. With no other choice, he accepted, and upon returning, he awakened the power of the chaos element, something that seemed destined from the very beginning. Chen looked at Boulay worried and asked if he might be overthinking it, wondering if everyone who awakened an elemental power went through something similar. The old man replied that they did not, saying he had never heard of anyone entering a spatial dimension to obtain an elemental power. He then explained that the chaos element was something he had read about only once, in ancient manuscripts over 1,000 years old. Curious, Chen asked what those books said, thinking it might give him some clue about what had happened. Boulay told him that, according to the scriptures, thousands of years ago the evil god Murius descended into the human world, spreading chaos, massacres, darkness, and pain. Humanity, desperate, fought to survive, but Murius's power was overwhelming, and the human army was almost completely annihilated. When all seemed lost, a hero appeared, Hesiod, who wielded the power of the chaos element, something never before seen. With that power, he gathered an army and fought against the evil god and his servants for years, until he finally defeated Murius, sealing his soul within the infernal tower known as Altalos. However, the price was high. Hesiod also had to remain sealed inside. Intrigued, Chen asked if the person he had seen could have been Hesiod himself. Boulay replied that if Chen truly controlled the chaos element, then it was quite possible that the mysterious man was indeed the legendary hero. Elsewhere, beneath a dark and turbulent sky, a dragon cut through the clouds toward the lower world. On a castle balcony, a man toyed idly with a flower until he saw the creature land. The dragon took human form and Hades smiled, saying that Argolis had finally arrived. The dragon man asked why he had been summoned so urgently, and Hades replied that he had completely lost the connection with Sunil's energy in Latonia, as if he had simply vanished, and therefore strongly suspected that Sunil was dead. Argolis grew irritated and demanded to know if that was true, insisting it was impossible for him to be dead, since none of those weaklings could ever defeat him. Hades replied that he knew that, which was exactly why he wanted Argolis to go to Latonia and find out what had truly happened. Sunil had been stationed there to guard the seal, so they needed to understand what went wrong. Argolis nodded, said he understood, and declared he would depart immediately. Meanwhile, back in the city, the protagonist was telling everything that had happened during his journey. Sally was amazed, saying he had gone through far more than she imagined inside the beast's cave. She had thought he only needed to eliminate a few monsters, but it turned out to be something much greater. Ban, jealous, asked what was so impressive about that, claiming he could easily do the same. Chen agreed mockingly, telling him to go ahead and try, saying he'd be ready to collect the leftover pieces of the swordsman afterward. Annoyed, Ban asked what he had just said and challenged him to fight right then. Trying to change the subject, Sally asked which element he had awakened after defeating the Beast King. The protagonist replied that he still didn't know and asked which element healers usually awakened. She explained that it was normally the element of light, though she had seen healers with affinities for water and even fire. Chen nodded, saying perhaps his element was light, and Sally commented that she had thought he might have awakened something different. Ban agreed, saying he also thought it was light. Chen remembered the old man's words, telling him to wait for the right moment before revealing his element. After some time walking, Sally said they had finally arrived, pointing to the best healing center in Delktown. They stopped in front of a church and began to enter. As he crossed the doorway, Chen thought to himself that he hoped his friends were all right, but the moment he took his first step, he stepped onto a magic circle. Confused, he asked what that was, when suddenly the door closed behind him. Sally, puzzled by the delay, looked back and realized Chen was no longer there. Inside the place, Chen looked around and wondered what was going on this time and why he had ended up there. At that moment, Hicks appeared, telling him not to be alarmed as he had merely used a simple teleportation spell to bring him to that place. He introduced himself as Hicks, one of the 4 guardians of the city of Latania Delk, explaining that this was a place reserved only for the strongest in Latania. Chen asked why he had been brought there, and Hicks explained that he knew Chen had defeated the Beast King and wanted to invite him to join their ranks, promising to grant any wish he desired. Chen began to walk slowly and replied calmly that he wasn't interested in joining anyone, that he just wanted to leave. Hicks started to grow angry, thinking to himself that he had already told everyone that Brat was just like the old man, but they insisted he try to persuade him, now clearly a complete waste of time. He thought his people were already on their way to eliminate all enemies and then turned to shout at the protagonist, saying he would give him one last chance. If he didn't accept the invitation, he wouldn't leave that place alive. Chen then released his power and firmly said he would also give Hicks one last chance, making it clear that if he didn't find Sally and the others when he got out, the Guardian would die. Hicks, the Guardian of Wind, prepared for battle. Outside, everything seemed normal. The children played, people walked peacefully through the streets, and nothing indicated what was about to happen. Sally, still confused, asked what was going on and where the protagonist had gone, since she was sure he had been right behind them. Suddenly, Ban smells something strange in the air and yells for Sally to be careful. In an instant, something rushes toward her, but Ban reacts quickly. He uses the shadows to pull her close and summons one of his clones to block the attack, then asks if she is okay, and Sally, still shaken, thanks him for saving her. Ban then glares at the man in front of him and, furious, asks how he dares try to hurt Sally, warning that now he will be torn to pieces, but the man remains motionless, staring at him in silence. Meanwhile, inside the church, Hicks continues launching attacks at the protagonist, who dodges every blow while protecting the child in his arms. Chen, worried, thinks he cannot properly fight while carrying a child, but when he looks at her, he notices the little one smiling with pure joy at his movements, which makes him wonder if she even understands the danger of the situation. Hicks laughs and compliments him, saying his reflexes are not bad at all and that he is stronger than expected, but warns that he should worry more about himself than about others. Chen replies that he does not understand the reason for this fight and asks whether it would not be better to work together to find a way to deal with the monsters outside. Hicks bursts into laughter and says that apparently the old man did not tell the whole truth, explaining that there is an agreement with the monsters. They stay away from the village in exchange for humans offered as sacrifices from time to time, and they do not interfere in hunts that occur beyond the borders. Hicks adds that Boulay has always known this and never opposed it, because sacrificing a few weak people in exchange for the peace of everyone is, according to him, a fair price. Chen becomes enraged upon hearing this, saying that then, from the beginning, they never intended to free Latinaya and only used that as an excuse to send people to their deaths. Hicks sneers, calling it a perfect plan and saying the protagonist should join them, because those monsters were sent by God and are invincible, claiming Boulay is merely a weak man pretending to be just, and that challenging a god is pure madness. Chen, with a steady gaze, replies that his decision remains the same. He has no interest in joining cowards. He guarantees Boulay would never accept such a shameful deal, and asserts that whether human, monster, or god, anyone who stands in his way will be eliminated. Hicks smiles darkly and prepares to fight again, calling Chen a fool for thinking that way. The protagonist sets the child on the ground and tells her to stay there without moving, then stands and faces the guardian, who keeps laughing and promises to kill the boy after finishing him and bury them together. But in the blink of an eye, Chen surges forward with absurd speed and lands a devastating punch in the Wind Mage's stomach, leaving Hicks completely stunned by the strength of his opponent. People start running in fear, shouting that someone is fighting over there. Suddenly, an explosion goes off. Sally was using her flames to try to contain the enemy, but he dodged with ease. Ban also tried to strike him from behind, but the man managed to turn around and block the attack. Ban uses the opening and yells at Sally to throw it now. She positions herself behind the opponent and unleashes hellfire, causing another explosion in that spot. As the dust begins to settle, a hole had been blasted into the ground. Breathing heavily, she just stands there staring at it. Suddenly, the protagonist arrives, landing a kick on that guy. The two stop, facing each other. Chen points his finger, saying that no matter what kind of deal they have, if they ever try to touch his friends again, he will destroy them all. The attacker keeps looking and realizes the protagonist's gaze doesn't lie. He really is willing to destroy everything over this. The man decides to leave. Startled, Sally asks what's going on and where the protagonist went. He says he will explain later, but they need to go back immediately because the old man might be in trouble. Meanwhile, inside his house, Boulay was looking at ancient books, saying that if the element the protagonist truly awakened is chaos, then, according to the prophecy in that book, demons and gods will soon descend, and the entire world will be drowned in endless darkness. The only person who understood the element of chaos can save them. Suddenly, the three open the door and walk in. Sally calls for her grandfather, worried, but he simply closes the book and looks at them, asking if they have already seen the friends. Hicks, Lucius, Sarkia, and the Palazes, the strongest mages on Earth, door up. They were the first to arrive there a few hundred years ago. That city was founded by them. Back then, Latanya was worse than hell. People who arrived there not only had to hide from monsters, but also faced other humans who killed each other for food. Those who couldn't find food started eating the corpses of their companions, and some even used their children as currency for food. When people were in despair, Dorup saved them and brought everyone to that city. He gave seeds to the people, taught everyone how to farm and establish a civil society with a system. However, the idea of leaving Latanya was considered taboo, and if they angered the monsters outside, the entire village would be in danger. Chen questions Boulay, asking why he didn't tell him that the peace of that city was bought with the lives of innocents. Ban is surprised and asks what the protagonist is talking about. Chen says that the city made a deal with the monsters and sends innocent people as offerings in exchange for a completely filthy peace. He asks once again if the old man didn't know that. Boulay remains silent, but the protagonist keeps pressing, asking why he didn't tell the truth from the beginning, if he's just like the others and feels no guilt for treating the lives of innocent people as merchandise. Sally yells at him, saying her grandfather is not that kind of person because he is one of the 12 heroes. The old man interrupts his granddaughter, saying it's fine because the protagonist is right. He really did agree to those criminal acts. Everyone is shocked. Boulay continues speaking and asks Chen to imagine what he would do if his loved ones were on one side and those innocent strangers on the other. The old man stresses that he did what anyone would have done. He chose to protect his loved ones, and as for those innocent people, he's not arrogant enough to abandon those he loves for someone he doesn't even know. The old man admits he truly doesn't know if it was the right choice, but at that time, they used Sally and Ban's lives to keep him under control. If he tried to break the balance in any way, they would have killed the two right in front of him. That's why he is willing to sacrifice his own life to defend justice, but he could not live with himself if he let those two die. The old man begins trembling and lowers his head, saying that Sally and Ban are the most important people in his life, and that to ensure their survival, he had no choice but to accept that agreement. He emphasizes that if it were just his own life, even if he had to face everyone, he would not have allowed that filthy trade to happen because he is not a coward, and he is not afraid of dying. The protagonist interrupts him, saying that if he were strong enough to protect his loved ones and those innocent people, then he wouldn't have needed to choose that way. Words that leave the old man stunned. Chen continues, stating that Bu Lai only accepted the deal because he cannot defeat the four guardians and protect his family at the same time. Ban gets angry, accusing Chen of disrespecting the old man and warning him to be careful or he might get stabbed if he keeps talking like that. Sally also gets irritated and says it's not like that because even if the protagonist is strong, there will always be someone stronger. That doesn't prove the old man is weak. Chen interrupts everyone, looks at Boulay and asks what he would choose if he had to pick between Sally and Ban. Everyone falls silent. The protagonist adds that this is just his point of view and if he offended anyone, he apologizes. Boulay replies that he doesn't need to apologize. In fact, the one who should be grateful is him, because Boulay had already accepted staying there forever until the protagonist appeared and rekindled his desire to leave that place. He emphasizes that Sally and Ban are already adults, and so he must allow them to make their own choices, making it clear that if they don't want to take the risk, he will prepare everything right there to protect them. Sally declares that no matter where her grandfather chooses to go, she will always follow him. Ban states that no matter what the old man plans, he will always stay by Sally's side to protect her. Chen stands up and says, it seems the time has come to fight back, that they will fight for the innocent residents who are gone and for those who still live, for their loved ones, and for freedom. That's why they will fight together. Boulay is moved and immediately gets up, saying that if they want to leave the city, they must first defeat all four guardians. The Wind Mage Hicks is the weakest, but defeating the other three, Lucius, Sarkia, and the combat specialist Dorop, will be the greatest challenge. From what he understands, they will come after them as soon as Hicks recovers. So their time is extremely limited. If they can't beat the Guardians, trying to find the Palace of the Gods will be suicide. The old man says that the three need to surpass their limits here and now, because from this point on, whether they survive or not will depend solely on their strength. The protagonist thinks that maybe it really has to be this way, since very few people could survive his true, complete master. Suddenly, he receives a system notification, a message from Bursting Sweetheart X100. Surprised and confused, he wonders what is going on and whether he really received a message from May. Still suspicious, he opens the message, thinking that maybe he can communicate with the outside world now. When he opens it, he reads, Chen Zile, are you online? I'm near the gate of the Floresas Church in the newbie village. Come quickly or I'll get mad. Hey, Chen Zile, why are you ignoring me? I've waited for you for a long time. If you keep ignoring me, I'll get mad. If you keep ignoring me, I'll teach you a lesson at school. I already finished my quests and logged out. I sent you a message on WeChat and you still didn't reply. Don't pretend to be offline, just wait. I'll make you pay at school. Chen Zile, why didn't you go to school today? Did you get addicted to gaming? If you don't answer, I'll call the police to your house to find you. Today, Xu Yuzhe and Zhao Feng also didn't come to school and I don't know why, but the police showed up in our classroom. Do you know what happened? Chen Churile, today a bald uncle came here and said, you and your mother are moving to another city. Why didn't you tell me? Is it because I keep pestering you to help me with homework? Are you mad at me? If you hate me, you could just ignore me, but don't leave. The truth is, I like being with you. If you see my message, please answer. Signed, Xiao Mei. After reading all that, the protagonist is confused, asking himself if the game is showing that he is still online, and why his mother would be moving if he doesn't even know who that bald uncle is. He doesn't remember any man like that among her friends. Suddenly he gets scared, thinking something must be happening in the real world and that maybe because his consciousness is stuck inside the game, his physical body has entered a vegetative state. He keeps staring at the messages as he gets lost in thought, imagining whether his mother intends to sell the house and move to another city for some reason, but soon realizes that makes no sense since the best hospital in the country is in City B, and with the wealth she has, she wouldn't need to sell anything. These thoughts begin tormenting him, and he yells, asking what the hell is happening and how he is supposed to find out the truth. At that moment, a child picks a flower and approaches, calling him dad and trying to hand it to him. But the protagonist reacts aggressively, saying he doesn't want to see anything or anyone right now, pushing the child and knocking him to the ground, telling him to go play alone. The child lies still and suddenly, with glowing eyes, screams that, yes, he is his father, a bad father, and that it is true. Hearing that, Chen panics and apologizes, begging the child not to cry, but it's useless. The child opens his mouth and begins screaming loudly. The system notifies that a punishment is being activated because the living being educated by the protagonist is feeling sad and unhappy. He watches the child crying and asks what he did to deserve all of that, saying his life is already hard enough. Suddenly, a bright light appears around him and the teleport effect activates. He's taken to a mountain surrounded by lava with massive explosions on the ground and a monster appears before him. Chen holds the flower and gives it to the child with a sincere look, saying he is sorry for what he did and asking if he can be forgiven. The child forgives him, and with that he transforms, saying that now it is time to end all of this. Meanwhile, in a house, Bros looks out the window deep in thought, unable to believe that Boulay is also there, and wondering why he asked them to hide the details of that fight. What was his intention? He remembers the conversation they had in which they said the old man is one of the 12 heroes, the one who defeated the demon Quink in the Battle of O'Brien, the strongest lightning warrior. He emphasizes that he never imagined seeing someone like that in person, and cannot understand how someone of that level could be trapped there. Boulay says all of that is in the past, and now he is just an old man. Besides, he has been in that place for a long time, so he asks Bros not to mention anything about his past. Still astonished, Bros replies that he cannot believe he is seeing the hero from the legends right in front of him and asks if Boulay looked for him for any particular reason. The old man confirms, saying yes because he needs him to promise something. Bros is surprised and asks what the great hero wishes, since it must be something important for him to have come personally. Boulay then reveals that it is about the protagonist and asks that if anyone asks for details about how Chen killed the Beast King, everyone must be as discreet as possible. He insists they should not reveal any important information about the boy. Bros answers that he can rest assured because even without understanding why Boulay wants to hide that, he promises not to tell anyone anything. The old man stands up saying he understands and thanks him, stating he will not bother him anymore and asking Bros to recover quickly. Bros watches the old man walk away and thinks that if even one of the 12 heroes is trapped there, then the desire to leave that place is nothing but a dream. However, before Boulay truly leaves, he turns back and tells Bros that if he really wants to get out of there, the only way is to find the Palace of the Gods, hidden somewhere in the desert. He explains that they are recruiting talented people from the city, and if Bros is interested, he can look for them on the south side of the city. Suddenly, someone arrives and asks if Bros is already up, since it seems his wounds are almost healed. But because it is late at night, they question why he is not asleep yet. Bros responds that thanks to the high-level healer there, his broken bones have already fully regenerated, and in a few days he will be back to normal. But after living through so much in these past days, his heart cannot be at peace. He then asks if one of the 12 heroes that Boulay also met Philoga to talk about the protagonist and the Palace of the Gods. Philoga is shocked, asking what he means by that and if that old man is really one of the 12 heroes. Bros confirms, saying that since they are both warriors, he recognized the man's portrait on the wall and used it as his goal, and if it weren't for that, he might not have recognized him at all. Philoga is unsettled, saying it cannot be true because the hero who ventured alone into the Black Sea and defeated the terrifying demon Quick in the Battle of O'Brien is also trapped there, and that the title of 12 heroes is not just symbolic, since they are truly the 12 strongest in the world. Every 5 years, the world holds a battle to determine the strongest. All guilds send 5 heroes to fight, and the 12 finalist guilds choose the supreme champion. That is how the 12 heroes were born. That year, the Black Horse and Thunderbird guilds shocked the world when Boulay made everyone remember his name through his own strength. Even though Boulay's Thunderbird guild lost to Chen Butong's Yunza and Azarsk's Phoenix, both won by a small margin, and their 5 heroes had already been 12 heroes in previous tournaments, being much older and more experienced. Even so, the newly formed Thunderbird defeated almost all former 12 heroes with Boulay as the main victor. But shortly afterward, the rising star of the guild disappeared after the Battle of O'Brien. Some say that besides the old man, everyone else died in that battle, and that Boulay went alone to the Black Sea to face the terrifying monster Quick, ending the war. Bros, upon hearing the story, is so shocked that he can barely think, and comments that Chen's abilities are equivalent to those of the heroes. He remembers that back then, Boulay shouted for his companions to be careful, but the enemy attacked quickly, knocking 2 of them down, and Boulay panicked when he saw it. He then looks at the pendant with the photo of Morse and Luna, Sally's parents, and thinks about how he decided to take Sally and leave Latonia. During all those years, he lived consumed by guilt and regret, unable to accept the truth and resigned to his own fate, telling himself that being trapped there was his punishment, but knowing that Sally was innocent. She shouldn't suffer with him. She deserved to live freely and enjoy life. That's why he placed the lightning god's enchantment inside her body, so that if she ever faced mortal danger, the spell would activate and not even a god could harm her. Gripping the pendant tightly, he promises himself that this time he won't break his promise. Back at the top of the mountain, the teleport brings the protagonist back breathless as the system announces the punishment has ended. He comments that this punishment was much harder than the last and wonders what is going on. Suddenly, the system notifies him that with each new activation, the monster's combat ability will increase by 10%. Shocked, he stands up and questions why, realizing the punishments will only get more difficult. The child looks at the system screen thoughtfully and asks if that's really all. The protagonist asks what she means, confused by the tone of someone who seems to understand the matter, and complains that he had terrible luck. He expected to summon a weapon or a pet, but ended up receiving a child to take care of. The child gets annoyed and tries to speak to him, but he interrupts saying he can't understand what she says. Then he notices something and asks if she can see that. She smiles and answers yes. He is surprised since neither Grandpa nor Sally can see the system, but that child can, and he doesn't understand why. Even so, he decides to take advantage of it and asks if, by being able to see the system, she knows something he doesn't, or if it has something to do with him receiving messages from May. The child tries to say a few words, but he gets irritated, thinking it is useless since he doesn't understand anything she says, though he still believes that Brat is the reason he can communicate with his friend. Suddenly, someone calls him, and when he turns around, he sees everyone gathered. He walks to them happily, saying it's good to see his two friends doing well. Bros smiles and comments that since the protagonist didn't go see them, they decided to come to him. Chen apologizes, explaining that the previous day he had some problems and had to rush back, and since it got late, he didn't want to disturb their rest. But judging by the looks of it, both have already recovered. Bros confirms, saying that thanks to Sally and Ban, they were able to recover so quickly. Ban, confused, asks who took care of them and if they know them, and Bros, embarrassed, asks him not to bring that up there. Chen changes the subject, saying the important thing is that everyone is fine, and asks why they came there. Filoga explains that they also want to join Bulai's expedition because they don't want to remain trapped in that place. Bros approaches, curious, and asks who that child is, saying he never imagined the protagonist was already a father. The child bites his finger, and the protagonist is left speechless as she strikes a pose and says, "Ya Luca." The protagonist takes the chance and says, "Yes, that is her name, Luca." Bon interrupts, impatient, asking what they are doing, reminding them they came there to talk because Grandpa is about to begin the training. Bros hugs the protagonist, saying it has been a long time since they last saw each other, and that they could chat a bit. Ban keeps getting irritated and yells for them to stop fooling around, saying they must take the old man's training seriously. Boulay, watching the scene, starts laughing. Bros asks what he's laughing about, and Boulay replies that it's nothing, only that since arriving there, he hadn't felt so excited, and that moment made him feel alive again. Sally watches silently, amazed, thinking that it's the first time she's seen her grandfather smiling so happily. Suddenly, he stops laughing and says that for now they can relax, but warns that when training begins, he won't let anyone escape, not even if they cry. At the end of the day, a man asks the old man if he wants anything to eat, since he is preparing the meal so the three can dine together. Luca, beside him, was playing with the vegetables, and the man asks if the child can't play somewhere else, because if Luca gets hurt while he is cooking, the protagonist will kill him. Boulay comments that the cook should prepare enough for 20 people, not just 3, which leaves the cook shocked, asking if he is expecting so many guests. The old man answers that's not the case, and suddenly the door begins to open. Everyone walks in, completely exhausted from the training, saying it lasted a bit longer than they expected. The old man, however, asks if the training is already over, finding it too quick since only 30 minutes have passed. He tells Lakshi to keep cooking a bit more while Lucas celebrates happily upon seeing that his father has just arrived. Shortly after, all the food is placed on the table. Chen finishes eating and, with a bloodthirsty look, calls Lakshi, saying he wants another bowl. The others take the chance and also ask for more. Meanwhile, the old man comments that they really are very strong, since they managed to endure more than half an hour against their own clones. However, he notices something strange and asks why they aren't happy, and everyone, irritated, replies that they aren't. Sally says they couldn't even fight properly because, even after trying for so long, they barely managed to injure the clones. Bros agrees, saying they've faced higher-level monsters before in one-on-one duels, but that had been completely different. Ban complains that those damn bastards were too cunning, and on top of that, the protagonist's clone had extremely powerful abilities. Chen agrees, thinking that was true since that battle felt more like a PvP fight. Their opponents weren't irrational monsters, but copies capable of thinking and creating strategies just like them. At first, when the clones split in different directions to hide their locations, they thought it would be individual fights and chase them together. However, they ended up falling into an ambush and were surrounded by the clones of Ban, Sally, Bros, and Filoga, while Chen's own clone eliminated the rest of the team, turning the final fight into a 5-on-1. In a way, they had all lost the battle before even fighting. Boulay tells the protagonist that this isn't a bad thing, because he analyzed the battle very accurately, exactly as Chen had noticed. They were all defeated before the fight even began. The old man then explains that team battles aren't about individual strength, but about the ability to fight together, taking advantage of each person's strengths. It's like a chess game where some pieces must attack, others defend, and some must be sacrificed so the king can be defeated. He also points out that the clones don't truly think. They simply analyze the opponent's abilities and created an effective strategy, the simplest and most efficient plan to handle a team of novices. Chen reflects that this makes sense. It was like solving a math problem. If you fully understand it, the answer is easy, but If you try to solve it without understanding, you fall into a trap. That's why they needed to learn how to fight as a team, recognize their weaknesses, and find ways to defeat enemies efficiently. Boulay then announces that the day's training is over and that the next morning everyone will be trained to work together, recommending they rest well at night. Lying in his bed, Chen begins thinking that even if it was just training, seeing his companions die without being able to do anything made him feel useless. If it were a real battle, the ones who would have died would be Luca or his mother. That feeling bothers him deeply, and he concludes that he is still very weak and needs to become stronger to protect the ones he loves. Suddenly, he hears a strange voice and asks if it's his uncle, looking around for an answer, but silence remains. Intrigued, he gets up, trying to understand what happened because he is sure it was his uncle's voice. He asks Luca if he also heard a strange voice, but the boy just shakes his head. Chen finds it strange. If not even Luca heard it, perhaps it was just exhaustion, and he was starting to imagine things. Luca then climbs on top of him, calling him dad, and Chen complains, saying that if the little one keeps holding onto him like that, they won't be able to sleep. But when he looks, he sees the boy is already fast asleep. Carefully, he lays him on the mattress, covers him with a blanket, and, watching his son, wonders how his mother managed to raise him alone. With a determined look, he murmurs to his mother that he will return soon because now that everything is clearer, he just needs to get stronger, defeat the Guardians, and leave that city with Boulay and the others. He remembers that even after defeating the Beast King, the strongest enemy he had ever faced, he realized that strength alone isn't enough. Suddenly, his uncle's voice echoes again, saying it's good he understood that so early. Surprised, Chen feels relieved to realize it really was his uncle, but still confused by being once again in another dimension. The man explains that compared to the brainless Beast King, the clones had much more refined combat abilities, but that wasn't all. Chen looks around, trying to understand where he is, and asks what that place is and why he was brought there. His uncle then replies that this is the inner world of Chen's heart and that, ever since he became his master, the uncle has lived there. Chen still doesn't fully understand, and the man approaches, saying that ever since he left that place, he had been too weak and needed time before appearing before him again. Chen says he understands and thanks him for all the help he has given, since it was thanks to him that he managed to defeat the Beast King. Curious, the protagonist asks why the inner world is filled with flowers. The man explains that a person's inner world reflects what they value the most, and apparently those flowers are connected to Chen's deeper consciousness. Holding one of the flowers, Chen asks if they are really connected to him, since he doesn't remember ever having any interest in flowers. His uncle replies that he can think about that later because the reason he is there is far more important. Staring at the protagonist, he asks if Chen would believe him if he said he could make him much stronger. Suddenly, an intense light radiates from the man. Releasing a crushing pressure, he states that even though he has recovered only 1% of his combat power, that is already enough for Chen to understand how terrifying the power of a chaos element is. The man adds that right now, Chen can't even unleash 0.001% of that power. Shocked, the protagonist asks if that is a joke, because that would mean a difference of 1,000 times between them. The man answers that this is only a conservative estimate. Surprised, Chen asks whether he meant conservative or exaggerated, and the man explains that he wants his disciple to learn how to access the true power hidden inside him and become the strongest, because if Chen dies, both of them will cease to exist. Suddenly, the system notifies, Path of the Chaos, Element Master, Mission Requirements. Survive for 3 minutes against your opponent. Reward 400,000 experience points. Shocked, Chen thinks he only needs to survive 3 minutes to receive such a reward. The Chaos Master then asks if he is ready. Chen transforms, pulls his sword from within his own body, and declares that it's time to fight. Meanwhile, in the church, a healer was treating Hicks and commented that the protagonist must be truly powerful because he had never seen Hicks so injured. The Wind Mage, irritated, retorts that Chen is weak and that he only got injured because he was careless. At that moment, another person approaches and asks if that is really true. A woman named Lucius removes her hood and says that if Chen had used his full killing move, Hicks would already be dead. The Wind Mage becomes furious and asks what she means by that. Lucius explains that Lord Dorup asked Hicks to evaluate Chen's combat power and that he ended up gravely injured because of it. She also says she doesn't understand how someone so useless became one of the 4 guardians. Irritated, Hicks asks why she's acting so arrogant since not even she could face that monster. Lucius approaches, steps on the Wind Mage's head, and says she wouldn't mind helping the Lord get rid of Hicks before the real plan begins. Furious, the mage asks how she dares act like that. Lucius answers coldly that although Chen is powerful, in her eyes he's nothing more than a barbarian with no strategy. And she adds that even Bu Lai before Lord Dorop is nothing more than an animal waiting for its own death. The healer, watching everything, comments that the old man has begun recruiting ordinary people from the streets. And since he is one of the 12 heroes, The people trust him, but if Lord Dorup intervenes, the entire city will fall into chaos and panic will spread everywhere. Lucius asks what the healer is trying to say, and he simply summons a monster, shocking the other two. It is a waiterer of Latanya. The man orders the wolf to go and enlighten those people of the city quickly, and the wolf runs off to carry out its mission. Meanwhile, inside his subspace, the mission timer was at 2 minutes. Chen keeps running, thinking that he is sorry, but he must avoid fighting the Chaos Master until the 3 minutes are up. As soon as he gets the reward of 400,000 experience points, he will train properly. Then a massive explosion occurs. Throwing him far away, he tries to hold on by driving his sword into the ground, and when he looks ahead, he cannot believe it because a massive fissure has opened. He asks how that can be considered training, and wonders if the Chaos Master is trying to kill him, because he had to use the Beast King's protection shield to dodge the attack. Otherwise, he would already be dead. The Chaos Master on the other side of the fissure asks if the protagonist is trying to avoid direct confrontation. He notes that he truly didn't expect the boy to dodge that attack, and apparently he underestimated him. However, he warns that those tactics will no longer work. Chen asks the Chaos Master who is behind him, and the moment the Master turns to look, the protagonist bolts off again, saying he just needs to stall things a little longer to finish the mission. However, he realizes he might be caught again, so he tries asking if they could rest for a bit, promising they can continue fighting as soon as he catches his breath for a few minutes. The Master says that running from a fight is not the solution, and suddenly appears behind the protagonist with incredible speed, shouting that a real enemy will never give him a chance to stop and breathe. He strikes, but Chen dodges and flashes behind his opponent using the explosive slash, launching an attack toward the Chaos Master, but the Master nullifies it. Chen thinks that since the Master attacked physically, he was able to use explosive slash to escape. Meanwhile, the Master is confused, wondering how that boy appeared behind him, since he couldn't see his movements, and it looked like he teleported directly behind him, so maybe. The protagonist stares at his opponent, thinking that his skill has a 5-minute cooldown, and if his uncle attacks now, he might fail the mission. The countdown is at 30 seconds. Chen throws his sword on the ground, says he understands, and once again asks if the Master can let him rest at least a little this time, promising that afterward he will continue training and will not run even a millimeter. The Chaos Master approaches slowly and says, "Fine," but only if the protagonist explains the technique he just used. Chen is confused, wondering if he means his explosive slash, and right then the system notifies that the countdown has ended and the mission is complete. With that, the protagonist receives 400,000 experience points and levels up. Chen begins explaining that those abilities are produced by the system when he levels up, and that using skills is like following a command. He thinks about it and his body moves on its own to execute the technique. He says he used explosive slash to dodge the attack and asks if there's a problem with that. The Master comments that he didn't understand most of what the protagonist said, but he remarks that he thinks he has seen that explosive slash before. Chen is surprised, asking if others have really used that technique. The Chaos Master says the way the protagonist moved felt very familiar, and he begins wondering who he fought that gave him that feeling, but no matter how hard he tries, he can't remember. Chen also starts thinking and recalls that the old man told him about the legend of Hesiod, and that Uncle was the one who gave him the power of the chaos element, so he is likely Hesiod, and if so, maybe he could regain his memories if he learns his own name. Excited about the solution, the protagonist calls the Chaos Master and says he forgot to mention something, but he knows who he is. The Chaos Master is surprised, and Chen continues telling the story, pointing his finger and declaring that the Chaos Master's real name is Hesiod, the one who killed the evil god Murius and saved the world. Chen asks if hearing that helps him remember anything, and Hesiod begins to think about that name. Meanwhile, in the real world, Loxi was sleeping and snoring loudly. Ban wakes up irritated, thinking it's fine that his grandfather brought a beast man back to the village, but he can't understand why he made that monster sleep beside him. He gets up annoyed, saying he can't stand the noise anymore, but then he smells something and becomes terrified, asking what that smell is. When he looks forward and realizes what it is, he dodges the first attack just in time as the bed is completely destroyed. The Beastman wakes up confused, asking what is going on. In front of them was Waderer. Laxi starts getting up, complaining that he is in pain and asking what is going on since the house is heavily damaged. He looks around and asks where Ban is, wondering if he is under the debris and calling for him without getting an answer, which makes him panic, thinking Ban might have been crushed to death. Suddenly, a rock hits his face and the Beastman becomes furious, yelling who the hell is throwing things around at midnight, because whoever it is must be begging to die. But when he looks forward, he realizes a fight is happening right in front of them. Ban manages to dodge an attack and tries to counterattack, but is instantly disarmed, and he thinks he is not mistaken. Consumed by rage and memories flooding his mind, he begins losing control, saying that this is the demon beast that killed his parents, and that he will never forget that smell, even if the monster turns to ashes. He unleashes all his power, saying he worked hard all those years just to one day find it and finally end everything by ripping off its head. But he never imagined the creature would come to him. Loxi shouts, asking if Ban is alright and why there is a demon beast there. Vengeance had already taken over Ban's mind, and he looks back, ordering the beast man to get out of there immediately. He begins walking slowly toward the monster, saying that today he will tear it apart piece by piece, rip out every bone one by one, and then spill its blood over his parents' grave. He takes a deep breath and charges forward with everything he has, screaming for the monster to die. Meanwhile, outside, the three of them watch everything. Lucius comments that this is very interesting. Hicks says that only those people being attacked in the whole city seems far too specific, and the healer states that the Wind Mage is right, which is why he already summoned other demon beasts into the village. And when the time comes, they only need to lure Bulai out, because Lord Dorup will personally kill him. He orders Hicks to go deal with the other rookies, saying that this time he cannot fail. Lucius gets excited, saying he can leave that new healer to her, since she hopes he lasts for a while. It wouldn't be fun if he died too quickly. Laxi runs as fast as he can toward the old man's house, begging for help and saying the situation is bad because there is a demon beast in their house. Bulai opens the door asking what is happening, and the beast man, panicking, says Ban is fighting a demon beast. The old man looks toward the city and realizes it is under attack and, without hesitation, starts releasing his lightning power, ordering the beast man to find the protagonist and tell him to protect Sally. Still inside the subspace, Chen keeps explaining the story, saying that the legends describe the savior Hesiod as someone who can use the power of the chaos element, that he defeated the evil god and sealed him inside the Inferno Tower Altalos, but in the end had to remain there as well. So he believes the Chaos Master really could be Hesiod, and that the place they first met must have been that tower. He asks if Hesiod remembers anything, but the Master says nothing comes to mind, and his thoughts remain blank. The protagonist thinks that in anime and manhwas people regain their memories when they hear their names. The Chaos Master says he truly has no memories of that world and that the name is just a title to him. And even if he is Hesiod, he still cannot recall what happened. However, seeing the technique the protagonist used gave him a familiar sensation for the first time and made him feel slightly connected to that world. Chen stays quiet listening and starts thinking about what is happening to him, why he is there, why he saved Hesiod, why he obtained the chaos element. There are so many mysterious things going on that if his uncle regained his memories, maybe he could answer some of his questions. In the middle of the city, there is complete chaos. Everything in flames because of the attack. Monsters are everywhere and people run as fast as they can, screaming for help. A young girl sits beside her mother lying on the ground, screaming for her to wake up. One of the monsters notices and rushes to attack her, but at the last moment Bulai uses the triple thunder and lands an extremely powerful blow on that monster, throwing it far away. He holds the girl in his arms and asks if she is hurt, and she shakes her head saying no, but suddenly he is surrounded by other monsters, and just as he is about to be hit, another strike comes and takes down all three monsters at once. Bros and Philoga arrive to help. Bros asks what is going on and why the monsters suddenly attack the city. The old man sets the girl down in a corner and explains that the city has a barrier around it, and people guarding it 24 hours a day to prevent monsters from entering, so those creatures should not have been able to reach the center without any commotion. This means those bastards can't wait any longer, and that these monsters are just a distraction, because the real objective is to kill them. The old man stands up and orders the two of them to save all the citizens and take them to his house. Bros asks where he is going, and Bulai replies that he needs to go to the outer area of the city to reseal the barrier. The warrior says that place will be full of monsters and that they will go too, but the old man immediately refuses, saying he doesn't need them because they must stay there to protect the people. He uses the first flash of the royal thunder and shoots off rapidly toward the outer zone. Chen and Lucius finally meet. She says his speed is much higher than the last time they fought. The protagonist is confused, realizing that this woman is the same hooded person who attacked Ban and Sally. He is surprised as he didn't expect the Lucius mentioned by the old man to be a woman. He yells, calling her auntie and asking why she attacked him. The woman gets angry and asks who he is calling auntie. Chen watches everything without understanding why they insist on attacking them. Because if they manage to find the Palace of God, everyone in that city will gain freedom. Yet they keep trying to eliminate them. Lucius states that Lord Dorup invested too much time and effort into building that city, and she will not allow anyone to threaten it. She also says the Palace of God is nothing but a lie, and fighting against the will of God is pure foolishness. Chen grabs his weapon and says he's sorry to inform her, but the Palace of the Gods is real. Besides, he doesn't care who tries to stop him or who tries to hurt his friends. Whether humans, monsters, demons, or gods, he will kill them all. Lucius smiles and draws her sword as well, saying he is arrogant and full of himself, asking if he seriously thinks he's strong just because he defeated that trash wind mage, the weakest of the four guardians. Confident, she declares she is someone as strong as Lord Dorop. She opens her cloak and summons the Shadow Sword Wolf, level 45, a dark assassin summon known for extreme speed and flexibility. As soon as the wolves appear, she orders the demon shadow battle to begin. The wolves charge at the protagonist, who remains still. With a single attack, he destroys every wolf, shocking the woman, who thinks it's impossible. But she quickly uses the 3,000 shadow blades. The protagonist raises the Beast King's shield and blocks all the blades effortlessly, asking if that was truly her strongest attack. Lucius is stunned again, realizing he blocked everything without the slightest struggle and that she underestimated him. Then she begins to float, saying that wasn't her strongest attack. She was only warming up. Suddenly, a colossal wolf appears beneath her feet, and she says she wants to see how long he lasts before her true power. The system appears again. Mission updated. Delk defense. Defeat the enemy leader. City integrity, 67 out of 100. Beast tide. Progress, 1 out of 100. He simply stares at Lucius as the battlefield intensifies. On the outside, the city barrier now had a small opening, and some monsters were managing to cross. The guards fought with everything they had to protect the core and stop the invasion. One of them, exhausted, says they're holding on for now and asks how much longer the mage needs to fix the crack. She replies breathless that there are too many monsters and the energy she absorbs isn't enough to block the attacks or seal the breach fully. If it continues like that, the barrier will collapse entirely. The leader shouts for everyone to hold the line, reminding them that their duty is to protect that area at all costs, even if it means dying. The group is inspired by his words and keeps fighting with renewed strength, but the barrier continues to break, more cracks forming everywhere. The mage then screams for help from Professor Daemont, saying they won't hold much longer. At that moment, a powerful bolt of lightning descends from the sky and hits the crack, which starts closing by itself. Everyone is shocked to see the barrier regenerating. The old man appears, and the guards feel relieved, recognizing that one of the 12 heroes has finally arrived. Boulay, still angry, notices that some monsters cross the breach and eradicates them with a single move. He tells the professor to leave that spot to him and go help the others reinforce the barrier. Daemont agrees and leads his team to another breach. Suddenly, a violent gust of wind sweeps the battlefield, obliterating the remaining monsters. A man appears, and the people feel even more relieved to see that Lord Dorop has arrived as well. However, within seconds, the ground is covered with magic circles, and everyone nearby is instantly burned to ash. The old man, shocked, asks what he thinks he's doing, but Dorop removes his hood, revealing his face, and says he gave those useless worms a chance to live there, so he has every right to take their lives whenever he wishes. He then looks at the old man and declares that this is the price for betraying him. Meanwhile, the protagonist continues his fight, dodging easily and moving at absurd speed. Sensing the wolf's movement, he pulls back and then bursts forward for an attack. The impact is so intense that the ground cracks beneath their feet and the unleashed power sends the wolf flying. Lucius watches in confusion, unable to understand what's happening, wondering how a simple healer's strike can be that powerful. The wolf crashes heavily on the ground, and Chen, acting as if he still isn't taking the fight seriously, tells her she should admit defeat and go save the city. She smiles with a disdain and says he clearly has no idea what's happening, because Lord Dorop himself opened the city barrier, and tonight every traitor will be punished, including Boulay, one of the 12 heroes, who will be personally killed by Dorop. The protagonist, confused, wonders if the old man is really fighting Dorop right now. He looks at his own sword for a few seconds, remembering that Boulay's blade is with him. If Boulay is facing an opponent like Dorop without his weapon, then he's at a huge disadvantage. Because of that, he decides he must defeat Lucius as quickly as possible and rush to help him. Focusing, the protagonist releases even more power and activates the annihilation skill. Lucius begins stepping back, frightened, muttering that this man is getting stronger by the second. Before she can react, the protagonist also activates Blessing, completely vanishing from her sight and appearing right in front of her in an instant. Shocked, the woman tries to counterattack and screams, asking how he got there, but Chen has already swung his sword, unleashing an explosive slash that hits her with devastating force. Breathless and wounded, Lucius asks why he didn't kill her, but he remains silent. With no strength left to continue, she loses consciousness and collapses to the ground. Immediately afterward, the system emits a new notification. Delk Defense Mission Progress updated. Shadow Mage Lucius defeated. Experience obtained added. Item obtained added. Overall mission progress. Beast Tide Advancement 3 of unknown total. City Integrity 53 out of 100. Surrounded by several tornadoes, the battle between the two was about to begin. Dorop moved first, pressuring with wind attacks, but Boulay managed to block the initial blows. Dorop provoked the old man, asking if he really believed he could defeat him, saying the era of the 12 heroes was long gone, and that now he was nothing more than an old relic, while he himself was a true god, watching insects like Boulay die slowly in the end. Even knowing that fight was nearly impossible to win, Bulai didn't retreat and kept resisting the attacks. But Lord Dorup increased his strength even further, creating a devastating storm of winds. The pressure was so great that he believed victory was guaranteed. Meanwhile, Lucius, coughing and trembling, could barely move. She remembered that the protagonist could have killed her easily with that last blow and wondered why he chose to spare her. In the middle of the storm, a sudden flash of light appeared, surprising Dorup. He couldn't avoid the first strike, which hit him square in the stomach, and immediately afterward the second blow hit his face. A flurry of attacks hurled him to the ground, completely destroying a house. The old man gathered a massive amount of lightning energy in his hand and activated the secret art, Thunder Fist. He charged in with everything he had and the resulting explosion was massive, but when he looked at the impact site, he noticed something strange. Dorup was no longer there. He reappeared behind Bulai, laughing, saying it was touching to see an old man far past his prime, trying so hard to protect pests, and that it had been a long time since an opponent made him feel that excited. Raising his hand, he said that despite that, the old man had no chance of winning, but out of respect, he would let him experience real terror, the true power of a four-element mage. Dorup unleashed his abilities, destroying everything around them, and four elemental monsters appeared at his side, ready to fight. In the middle of the city, Bros and Philoga were eliminating the remaining monsters to protect the citizens. The shadow assassin sheathed his daggers, realizing there were no enemies left nearby. The warrior commented that it looked like the old man had managed to repair the barrier and asked if his companion was all right. Philoga replied yes, but said it was the first time he had seen so many high-level monsters. Bros agreed, saying he had never witnessed such numbers either, and wondered how the people who arrived there first had survived if they faced something 1,000 times worse. He said it was time to help the people in the outer zone, since they must be going through even worse situations. Suddenly, both of them noticed something in the sky, the giants summoned by the Lord. The shadow assassin, stunned, said they looked like elemental summons of water and fire, and that it was unbelievable since he had never seen summoned creatures that large. He never expected to find such a powerful elemental mage in that city. Bros explained that many mages can use different elements, but their power is usually weaker than those who specialize in a single element, which limits their combat ability. However, that mage was different, the only one capable of controlling so many elements with that much strength. The warrior became tense, convinced that someone with such power could only be him. Philoga then noticed something descending from the sky and told the warrior to look. It was the old man, still fighting fiercely. Even before Dorup's overwhelming power, Bulai still managed to dodge every attack. He got close enough to use Triple Thunder, but at the moment he launched the strike, Dorup smiled, calling him naive. The earth creature tried to attack Bulai from behind, but the old man swiftly dodged and countered with a sequence of powerful blows, destroying the monster. Before he could catch his breath, a water elemental appeared behind him and fired a spear made of waves. The attack was devastating, but Bulai barely escaped. Before he could recover, another strike came his way. The earth monster, previously destroyed, had already regenerated. The hit completely demolished the mountain he was standing on, but once again Bulai survived, though now severely wounded. Dorup appeared behind him, laughing and saying he didn't expect the old man to dodge his attacks, admitting he had underestimated him. Even so, he said that in the end, Bulai was nothing but a mortal weakened by age, unlike him, someone who kept a young body and unlimited magical power that all envied. He declared himself a god ruling over weak and pathetic mortals. Even wounded, Bulai stood up and replied that someone who traded his soul to demons in exchange for eternal power was nothing more than a dog licking its master's feet. He asked if it was worth living without tasting, smelling, or touching, and said that in truth, Dorup was the one who envied others. Enraged, Dorup told him to shut up and cast a spell that hit him full force, dragging him with magic and saying that the old man's life and death were in his hands, and killing him would be as easy as crushing an ant. The Lord states he will tell everyone it was Bulai who opened the barrier and that he, Dorup, is the hero who defeated the traitor and saved the city. He says it's time to dispose of the trash, but before he can act, the protagonist appears like a demon, charging at absurd speed and landing a direct blow, slamming Dorup violently into the ground and saving his master. Confused, the Lord asks who that boy is. Chen turns to Bulai and asks if he is all right. The old man replies that yes, he only suffered a few minor injuries and asks what he's doing there. Chen explains that after defeating Lucius, she told him Dorup planned to kill him right there, so he ran as fast as he could to bring the sword back. Regretful, the boy apologizes, saying that if he had remembered sooner, maybe his master wouldn't be so badly hurt. Bulai smiles and tells him not to worry because even with his sword, he wouldn't have defeated Dorup. After all, the enemy had already given his soul to the devil in exchange for unimaginable power. The old man lowers his head and admits that the enemy is right. He is no longer the man he used to be. His body has aged, his strength has faded, and as a mortal he is simply descending the mountain of life. Even so, he stands and reveals he left a teleportation seal on the campus. He orders Chen to take Sally and the others and flee, because he will stay behind to face the monster. Chen becomes irritated at hearing this and says he's not leaving, that he will never abandon his companions. He extends the sword and says his mother always taught him that living in that world would never be easy, but that one should never accept fate. One must fight for what they believe in. The protagonist declares that they are going to defeat Dorop and take everyone to the Palace of God, leaving that place together. Bulai becomes emotional, takes the Ozil sword, and at that moment a system window appears before Chen. Mission complete. Ozil sword returned. Attributes reduced. Reward: 150,000 experience points. Dorop starts laughing, mocking him and asking if he really thinks he can defeat him. Gathering unmatched strength, the elementalist concentrates an immense amount of magic and creates a glowing sphere that explodes violently upon hitting the ground. But when the smoke clears, none of the three have even a scratch thanks to the Beast King's shield. Laughing even louder, Dorop calls them trash for daring to challenge him and announces they will witness the power of a god before invoking the skill Explosive Fire Rain. Flames begin falling non-stop, bombarding the field, and even though the initial defense holds, the shield begins to crack under the pressure of the devastating assault. Chen watches, worried, thinking the enemy's attack is far too strong. The system warns that the Beast King's protective shield is about to break. A few seconds later, the barrier shatters and the attacks continue mercilessly. After some time, Dorop finally stops the attack and, laughing, says, "No one could survive that," declaring that the old man must have turned to ashes. But when the dust settles, he is shocked to see another protective barrier raised before them. Chen and Boulay are also stunned as they see Luca in the air maintaining the new defense. Angry at the destruction and arrogance of the enemy, the boy glares at Dorop, who cannot believe what he is seeing, and asks how a child could use such a powerful magic shield. The system displays the message: Luca's battle will activated. Luca level 5, health 3000, mana 300, skill Aegis shield. Description: a powerful magic shield capable of absorbing damage and converting half of it into magic damage. Cost 100 health per second, no cooldown. Luca begins to fall asleep and Chen, worried, runs to him. The boy looks at him weakly, calls him dad, and collapses with no energy. Chen holds him in his arms and tells him everything is fine now because daddy is here. He is amazed, realizing that not even the Beast King's shield was able to withstand the attack, but Luca's shield did. If not for him, both he and Boulay would have been reduced to ashes. The system notifies that Luca's battle will has dissipated and that he will enter storage space to recover, which may take up to 24 hours. Luca begins to turn into energy, and the protagonist thanks him, wishing him a good night's rest and promising to take care of the rest. The system confirms Luca has been stored. The old Boulay comments that Dorop used too much energy casting so many spells in a row, so he must be in a cooldown period. He says he will draw the enemy's attention so that Chen can get close and use his strongest attack. Boulay charges forward and Chen watches, thinking he wishes he knew Dorop's level because clearly he is stronger than the Beast King. He tries to analyze his status, but nothing appears, which irritates him, reminding him of the time he fought the Dominator. Dorop sees the old man approaching and angrily says he is as irritating as a pest. The two stare at each other. Boulay raises his sword and tears off the bandages wrapped around it, declaring that it is time to settle everything once and for all. A red energy begins pulsing from his body, surrounding him completely. Dorop mocks him, saying this isn't a fight but a one-sided massacre. Boulay simply replies that they will find out. He then charges forward using the second form of lightning charge. Dorop says the old man is nothing but an overrated relic and invokes the power of Earth, raising a massive barrier in front of him. But Boulay slices the wall in half with a single strike. More barriers appear one after another, yet the old man keeps advancing without hesitation, cutting through all of them as if they were paper. Dorop begins casting the fire element and unleashes a sequence of violent attacks, but Boulay charges relentlessly, dodging everything with precision. Two elemental monsters appear to block him, but he destroys them with one blow. Dorop keeps a smirk on his face and tells the old man to conserve his strength, saying he will never truly get close. However, the protagonist suddenly appears beside him and, without hesitation, lands a punch straight to his face, sending the enemy flying. Boulay takes the opening, shouting that this is their chance, and launches forward. He says that even if Dorop sold his soul to a demon and gained immense power, he still has the weak defense of a mage. Concentrating all his energy into the sword, Boulay states that even if he is no longer in his prime, this strike is enough to kill him. Then he unleashes the attack with everything he has. A massive explosion engulfs the sky, hurling Dorop into the ground and triggering another detonation that destroys everything nearby. The energy released is so intense it reaches the clouds, warping the vision of the fighters. Boulay declares that it is over. When the two return to the ground, the protagonist looks at his master and thinks that this is the true power of one of the legendary 12 heroes. The force Bulai released wasn't inferior to Dorap's. It may have even been greater. The old man then comments that the barrier still needs many repairs and suggests they split up to cover more ground. He orders Chen to go west while he goes east where monsters are attacking. Chen agrees and says he can handle it. But before they move, the protagonist feels something strange, as if he is forgetting something important. The feeling grows quickly and he realizes that even after the battle, the system didn't send any victory notification, which can only mean one thing. At that moment, Bulai senses the same presence. Dorap rises, furious, saying he didn't expect that boy to break his control with a single blow. He says that in the end, none of that matters because the power he possesses is far beyond mortal comprehension. The wounds on his body start regenerating instantly, and Chen realizes with horror that the regeneration is identical to the Dominator he faced at the beginning of his journey. Bulai comments that everything now makes sense, because Dorap's power doesn't come from demons, but from the underworld god himself, Hades. Chen looks confused and the old man continues, saying he remembers the man who killed Sally's parents. The power he used was very similar to Dorap's. Back then, Bulai heard Argolis mention the name Hades. He remembers that after Argolis slaughtered everyone on the battlefield, he held Sally's mother and said none of them were the chosen ones, tossing her aside and complaining that he had come there for nothing, and didn't know how to explain it to Lord Hades. Wounded on the ground, Bulai cursed him and shouted that he would kill him, but Argolis ignored him and flew away. Even nearly unconscious, Bulai swore that no matter where that man went, he would one day find him and kill him. Now he says that the power he feels coming from Dorap is the same type of energy as that bastard's, which means there may be a direct connection between him and the reason everyone is trapped in Latonia. Dorap is surprised, admitting he didn't expect the old man to know so much. He says he intended to eliminate him without resorting to his true power, but now he sees that even at his age, Bulai is far more troublesome than he imagined. The Lord asks if they still haven't understood, since no elemental power can hurt him and all physical attacks are useless against him. Dorap says he wanted to give them a painless death, but now he will torture them until they beg to die. Suddenly, the Lord's body becomes wrapped in a strange force and disappears completely. Chen and Bulai look around trying to understand where he went, while the system flashes red warnings to the protagonist, repeating that the target has vanished. Chen says it wasn't a matter of speed. Dorap truly vanished from the spot. Then he senses a presence behind him, but it's already too late. Dorap appears behind Bulai, saying he's right there, and strikes him directly in the back, sending him flying. He then lands several consecutive blows. Chen rushes as fast as he can to help his master, but Dorap uses his abilities to push them apart. Even so, the protagonist recovers and charges for a counterattack. Just as he is about to hit the Lord, Dorap simply disappears again. Chen can't understand what is happening, since his punch passed through the opponent's head as if it were air. Then the Lord reappears, landing a devastating strike on his abdomen and mocking him, asking where he is looking. Dorap laughs and keeps attacking, calling the protagonist a useless existence and saying it's pathetic that he dares challenge him. Countless blows hit him, crushing him with overwhelming pressure until Chen is hurled violently against a boulder. He gets up with difficulty and the system informs him his health is below 10%, asking for immediate recovery. Hurt, Chen thinks that bastard really must have an invisibility skill, and that the previous strike was absurdly powerful. He watches the Lord and concludes that even receiving only a fraction of a god's power has pushed both him and Bulai to the brink of collapse. Then he realizes that is the true power of Hades, the underworld god. Chen becomes furious, wondering if to the gods they are nothing more than insignificant ants. Dorap asks what's wrong and whether he's feeling insignificant, commenting that humans are cruel by nature. After all, even children enjoy torturing ants on the ground. He smiles and continues using his abilities, saying humans are like ants, and that he never gets tired of watching them struggle desperately. Chen is pulled by Dorap's force until they are face to face. The Lord says he should abandon the dream of saving the world because it is nothing but a joke. However, if he can entertain him a bit longer, he might earn the right to stay alive. While they speak, Bulai approaches from behind and angrily unleashes the Thunder Slash, cursing the enemy as a bastard. But Dorap, far more powerful, disarms him with a single movement, throwing the sword far away and trapping him immediately after. He then says Bulai still hasn't understood. For someone who possesses the power of a god, all elemental attacks are useless. It doesn't matter how strong mortal power is. It is impossible to kill a god, and that is the hopeless reality. Chen begins to wonder if elemental attacks are truly useless against gods, and whether this scenario is really part of the game Cosmo. Meanwhile, Dorap wraps the sword with his power and raises it before the protagonist, saying he had promised one more chance, and that chance had arrived. Laughing, he proposes a cruel game. If Chen kills the old Bulai with his own hands, then everyone can leave alive. Without hesitation, the protagonist refuses. Dorup then changes his tone and says that, in that case, he will have to watch the old man being tortured to death, and his companions will be next. The Lord pulls countless stones and begins crushing Bulai's body slowly, mocking him and asking if Chen can feel the pain the old man is suffering, provoking him to end his suffering quickly. Chen shouts for Dorup to stop, threatening to kill him if he touches Bulai. The Lord simply smiles and says there are only two choices. Either everyone dies, or Chen kills the old man to save the others. Bulai screams in pain and Dorup insists, asking what the choice will be. The protagonist is torn, wondering if there is truly nothing he can do except watch everyone die. He thinks of his son, of the friends he made, and of his mother, remembering that he still hasn't gone back to understand what happened in his house. Doubt consumes him until a voice rises inside his heart. Hesiod laughs, calling Dorup trash and asking how something like that could be considered a god. Surprised, Chen is pulled back into his subspace, the same place where flowers float everywhere. He asks himself if he's really inside his consciousness, unable to believe he ended up there at such a moment. Hesiod asks if he's going to give up, saying it would be shameful if the master he chose died to a worm like Dorup. Chen answers that it's impossible to hurt him, since he possesses the power of a god, and elemental powers were granted by the gods themselves. Hesiod agrees, but asks why would the gods who rule over mortals give them a power capable of killing them? Naturally, common elemental powers cannot affect them. Chen then notices the tone in his voice and asks if he has something up his sleeve. Hesiod smiles and says that if Chen dies, he will also disappear, so he cannot allow them both to be beaten by someone like Dorup. He says the power of the underworld god is truly terrifying, but what matters is that Dorup recognized Chen, and that changes everything. Confused, the protagonist asks if they are really talking about him. Hesiod explains that yes, common elemental powers are useless against gods, but Chen is not an ordinary mortal. The chaos elemental power he received is the only one capable of killing gods, and now it is time to show just how terrifying that power can be. He raises the chaos energy to 3% of its total strength. Outside, Dorup continues laughing and taunting, saying that if Chen has given up, then he will kill them both, starting with the old man. At that moment, the protagonist interrupts him and asks whether the one who should die there isn't actually him. The system warns, Divine Blessing successfully recharged, Holy Strike ready. Chen activates Divine Blessing, and the system announces that all negative effects have been nullified. His speed is increased by 20%, and he will now absorb life with each strike. Dorup laughs even harder, saying the human is entertaining, but will always remain nothing more than an insect before him. He tries to attack, but Chen, eyes firm and unwavering, grabs the blade of Dorup's sword with his bare hands. Dorup freezes in shock, unable to believe what he is seeing, but before he can react, he takes a punch straight to the face. Chen shows no mercy and continues attacking non-stop, blow after blow, crushing Dorup's health completely until he lands a devastating kick that slams him into the ground with terrifying force. At that moment, Hesiod's aura appears behind the protagonist, explaining that if the power of the gods can be compared to fire, then the chaos elemental power is like water, something capable of extinguishing that divine flame. The system reappears, showing several notifications. The skill Elemental Extinction has risen to level 12. Now, the chaos power at that level can injure even enemies who possess the power of a god. When the protagonist enters extinction state, each damaging strike reduces the cooldown time of Divine Blessing and Holy Strike by 15 seconds, and when 10 strikes are accumulated on the same enemy, he will take 20% additional damage from the Chaos Elemental Explosion. Eliminating elite or insane level enemies instantly restores all cooldowns. Hesiod then says the protagonist is now a true Godslayer. The system indicates Extinction active, 20 seconds remaining. Bulai watches from afar, impressed, asking if that is truly the power of the chaos element. The protagonist asks Hesiod why he only released that power now, and he replies after reflecting for a moment, if the enemy had not used divine power, he would never have revealed the god-killing power because it is an absolute taboo. No god would allow such a thing to exist. Now the gods have surely sensed the protagonist's presence with their sharpened senses. Hesiod warns that from this point on they will send the strongest to hunt him, and that future enemies will no longer be mere lackeys, but the true gods themselves. At that moment, a divine voice echoes, Mission prompt. Due to the full release of the chaos elemental power, you have obtained the high-class elixir, Scattered Tears. Mission activated. Chaotic Trials. Requirements. 1. Use Scattered Tears. 2. Use Divine Blessing or Holy Strike twice in battle. 3. Use the god-killing power to annihilate Dorup. Chen tells Hesiod not to worry, declaring that he will get out of there no matter what, even if it means becoming the enemy of the gods. The system displays the item information, Scattered tears. Tears left behind by monsters. Upon use, instantly restores 1,000 health points and 700 mana. All abilities have their cooldowns restored and recovery speed increases by 100%. Attacks regenerate 50 health points per strike for 6 seconds. After use, the Eyes Scattered effect remains active for 1 minute, allowing you to see all hidden units. Chen drinks the elixir saying that what he needs to do now is kill that bastard. Thinking it's time to end everything, the system warns, Extinction active, health restored by 1,000, mana by 800, abilities recharged, Holy Strike, Divine Blessing. Extinction cooldown recovery speed increased by 100%. Dorop begins to rise, saying that this cannot be possible because Lord Hades had already taken his soul and removed all his senses, yet he still trembled in pain. He stares intensely at the protagonist, confused, asking what this guy did, because maybe he was the legendary one. Suddenly, he panics when he senses an attack coming his way, tries to dodge, but is thrown backward. The protagonist advances like a true godslayer, using Divine Blessing and Holy Strike. Dorop tries to use his invisibility ability to escape, shifting to the side, but Chen tracks him using only his eyes. The system warns, Eyes Scattered activated, opponent's concealment nullified, target locked. Desperate, Dorop begins to wonder if that man could really see him. The protagonist's attack hits him, and Chen keeps striking non-stop. The system shows 3,600 health deducted, 30 attacks accumulated, explosion damage tripled. Dorop keeps losing health rapidly. The system announces the cooldown of Divine Blessing is complete. Chen uses it again, removing another 3,000 health. Opponent's health below 10%. The system indicates. Scattered Tears effects end in 2 seconds. Extinction State ends in 5 seconds. Chen gathers all the remaining energy in his body for one final attack, shouting for Dorop to go straight to hell. But before striking, he notices Dorop is smiling and asks whether that is truly the power of a god slayer. Chen launches his maximum attack, generating an explosion so intense the entire forest trembles. His companions far away notice the light streaking across the sky. The system announces Dorop has been completely annihilated. The protagonist has obtained 3 million experience points. Items acquired: Red Key, Wind Elemental Stone, Ice Armor, Earth Ring. Level up. Requirements fulfilled. Use of Scattered Tears during battle, use of Divine Blessing twice, and use of the God-slaying power to annihilate Dorop. Mission complete. Chaotic Trials. Additional reward: 1.5 million experience. Item acquired: God Essence. Level up. New features unlocked: Composite Forging System, Illustrated Manual, Map, and Detection. The battle finally ended. Chen returns to his human form and Boulay runs to him asking if he is alright. With a faint smile, he looks at the old man and says he managed to win. Exhausted, he collapses right after. Meanwhile, in the underworld, several souls were trapped in bottles behind the Lord of the Underworld. Suddenly, one of them begins to fade. Hades notices and wonders if Dorop's soul truly disappeared, since he was the guardian of Latonia. With that, he is certain the Godslayer has truly resurfaced. At that moment, Argolis should already be in the middle of the infinite sea. Sailing, he begins complaining that the boat is so slow it's irritating, but it's the only possible way to cross that sea. He asks Cecil how long until they arrive, and she replies they're almost there. Argolis then smiles as he sees the portal that connects the underworld to the other world.